Let's see. Hello, everyone. Can you guys hear me good? I want to make sure everything's working before we get into this. Let's see. Okay, awesome. All right, guys. Tonight we're going to be talking to Les Odell. He is a Bigfoot researcher from West Virginia. So let me bring him up. Hey.
Hey, how you doing?
Good. How are you?
Good. You?
I'm doing good. I'm in a house that's beside the cemetery, and there's all kinds of things banging in the kitchen.
I hear you.
Okay. So you are researching Bigfoot in West Virginia, documenting, and I did visit the West Virginia Bigfoot Museum. I saw a lot of your work.
Mm-hmm.
It's amazing.
Thank you.
One of my favorite things that you did was that you documented, your stories in a book.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's really cool. Like, I would never have thought to do something like that, but that's awesome that you did that. I did not have a chance to read them all, but I would love to go back up there and read them all, spend some time and read them.
Yeah.
So tell everybody a little bit about
that's not even all of them either.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Are you going to add to it eventually?
Yeah, probably eventually. I keep getting. I mean, I get new ones every so often, and I don't even think, because Laurel actually took my folder, my binder, because I have a binder. It's about that thick, and she took and transcribed a bunch of them and put that together. But yeah, that's not even all of them. That's a little folder. My binder's actually one of the 1.5 or 2 inch binders.
Okay, so the first question I want to ask you is, what does Bigfoot research mean to you personally?
Technically, I don't really consider myself a researcher, to be honest with you. I more probably consider myself to be an investigator, because I actually talk to folks and go out to some of their locations where they supposedly have their sightings and things. So I don't know if I really would consider being a researcher, because in my opinion, I don't have something in front of me that I can research. I can't sit and watch this possible creature or anything like that. So I'm more of an investigator. But I enjoy talking to folks. I enjoy hearing their stories. I enjoy going out in the woods and checking things out and seeing what I can find.
See that, and I think the reason I called you researchers, because you're actually getting out there in it. You're going and talking to these people. You're exploring the woods. You're trying to gather this information, and you're documenting it very well. So yeah. I definitely think that is definitely good research. So have you had personal experiences with Bigfoot?
I haven't, as far as a visual, I haven't seen anything. As far as possible vocals, I've had 2 experiences, and I'll say possible because I don't know what made the sound. I didn't see what made the sound. I wasn't there wasn't anything that I could compare it to, or I've heard 2 times I've heard what some call the howl, long drawn out howl. One was in Tucker County, and one was in Randolph County. But other than that, and the only other thing that I had that was weird for me was I was in Randolph County. I had been there overnight with another researcher, investigator, whatever you want to call it. And he had left and went home. Excuse me. And we were in an area where he collected different. Well, it's actually the other fellow that has the cast at the museum, Daniel.
Okay.
He was actually telling me stories, because it was in his area where he collects things and goes out and checks things out. And we were there quite a while during the night, and he decided he was going to go home because he lived close by. But I decided I'm going to stay. Didn't have any kind of experiences that night. No noises or anything like that. Didn't catch anything on cameras or anything. So I got up the next morning and I went to another area that I'd been to before, and he had told me that, he had collected a couple sightings from that area. And I stopped on this fire road, the one of the not logging road, but it's for the National Forest Road. And I stopped there, and there's a gate, and I get out and I started to finish up my YouTube video that I had started from the night before, and I'd messed up a couple times on it, and then I started on it in again on a third one, and I heard this knocking sound come from up in the woods, like, off to my left. And at first I'm like, man, it sounds like a woodpecker, quickly. Then I noticed it sounded like wood on wood, and it had what I call a cadence to it, almost like Morse code. It was, and again, it may have been a woodpecker. I'm not sure. But it sounded off to me. I mean, I'm in the woods a lot, and I hear woodpeckers, but this just sounded weird. So I decided to go, hike up in that area, check it out. So I went back to my vehicle. I got my backpack and everything, and started up the hill. And I'm looking in the areas in the trail where there's like a spring and stuff, and looking for any prints. Well, I found some boot prints and whatnot. And as I'm standing there, and if you watch the video, you see me saying the video, I don't know what that was, but I didn't mention what I heard. And what I heard was footsteps, what sounded like footsteps to me, walking back toward where I had just come from, but probably, I know I could see 50, 75 feet off to the left, but I didn't see anything. So I proceeded to the top of the ridge and didn't find anything. Didn't hear the knocking again. And I came back down and I went around the back of my vehicle, and I have an old town and country van that I go out and do this stuff in. I got it set up where I have everything in it. I got a bed in it, and and I went to raise the hatch on it, and I noticed on the hatch that there was handprints, big handprints in the dirt on the hatch. One was on the top, and one was like right where the windshield, where the wiper arm is on the window. So I don't know what that was from, because the strange thing to me that caught me off guard with them is there was a place like where the one was up on the top of the hatch, right below it looked like there had been hair had rubbed in the dirt, and whatever had touched it, because I mean the road was dry, I had dust all over the van. Whatever had touched it had to have been wet, because it left like a mud imprint on that dust. And I took pictures of it and everything, and I was hoping to be able to get home and pull them off there, but on my way home I hit rain and it washed it all off, and so I lost that. And but yeah, I don't know if I had a Bigfoot experience there, or if I just had run into some weirdo running around, looking in my van.
So was the handprint bigger than yours, than a regular? Okay.
Yeah. And I got pretty good sized hands. So.
See, at least you're also looking at it from the aspect that it could be something else.
Yeah.
Even in the paranormal community, there's so many people that hear a noise, and it could be your heater kicking on, and they're like, it's a demon. They always jump to conclusions. So you have to look at it, from all aspects. Definitely.
Well, I think the reason I do that in my investigating is because I started, out in the paranormal world years ago, and I've done investigating for several years, and then, kind of bled over into Bigfoot. So I use the same methodology as I do, in paranormal.
Yeah, that's awesome. All right. I just want to say hi to everybody in the chat. Thank you all for being here. Share this out. If you have questions for Les, you can comment them in all capital letters so I can see them. So What was the moment that you knew you wanted to kind of go looking for Bigfoot or into these strange things? Like what was that turning point for you?
I mean, it's always been an interest, but the paranormal was more of an interest to me, um, mainly because I was like a lot of other folks. Bigfoot doesn't exist here. All you hear about, when you hear about Bigfoot, you think of the Pacific Northwest and things like that. And then my oldest son, a few years ago, for some reason, his interest, you know, grew in the cryptid world, and he got into Bigfoot, and we started talking, and one thing led to another. It was like, hey, well, let's start a Facebook page. Let's give people of West Virginia a place to come, tell their
Mhm.
stories, share their stories, their encounters, and not worry about being ridiculed and and things like that. So that's how it got started. And that it just started out just a general little page. It grew way faster than I thought it was going to. I mean, it within the first few months there was only like a couple hundred people. Then all of a sudden it was like 3,000, 4,000, and I think it's like 18,000, between
Yeah, you
17
have
and
an
18,000.
amazing following on Facebook.
And
Yeah.
I because of that, people have contacted me about all kind of things. Whether it's UFO, ghosts, you know, Bigfoot, Dogman stories, just weird things, and it's led to me kind of meeting a lot of people in the Bigfoot community now and the cryptid communities here in West Virginia and Pennsylvania, Ohio, and things like that. But it all started from just wanting people to have a place to come and share their stories.
And that's awesome because you said people are reaching out to you because, we hear these stories, like you said, and you're kind of like, does it exist? Does it not? But then
Yeah,
when you have so many people from all over having experiences,
yeah,
there's definitely something there.
mhm,
It's validating that something's out there that people are seeing.
yeah. And people ask me, do I believe in Bigfoot? And most of the time, my answer is I don't know. Um, they'll ask me, does it exist? And I'm like, I don't know. I haven't seen one. I kind of look at it as like I call myself kind of a skeptic believer,
Hmm.
mainly because the believer part comes from I have listened to a lot of people. I've talked to a lot of people, and then when you can take those encounters and correlate them with stories and encounters from other states, and they match up, and then there's aspects of the stories that are way too similar not to be something they're for there not to be something there.
Hmm.
But I also, with my, I guess, investigating background, or whatever you want to call it, I'm always asking, well, how come we don't have this? Where is this? Where do they go? How do they do this? And because you hear the people say that they see these things do certain things, and just like for instance, this past weekend I went to a cave in Randolph County, mainly because you hear the theories that these things live in caves,
Hmm.
and I can see in my point of it, I can see that they can shelter in caves, maybe, but to live deep in caves, that opens up a whole different kind of whole new can of worms. As far as what they're able to do, if they're just a primate,
Hmm. My kid knocked my light out. Hold on. um, so before we get kind of dived into all the way into Bigfoot, you also do some research or investigating into paranormal and aliens, all of it, kind of everything.
Yeah. Aliens, I'm not. I mean, I've talked to people about aliens, but I'm not. It's just not a subject that I'm too interested in as far as diving deep into.
Hmm.
But like I said, the paranormal. If I was to choose, the paranormal is probably more my favorite. Is probably my favorite out of all of it. I think maybe because I've done it for so long, and I feel more comfortable, with what I've experienced, and what other people have experienced and what I've done doing investigations and helping folks out than the Bigfoot. I mean, I've talked to a lot of people with the Bigfoot subject, and whether a lot of stuff that I talk to people about doesn't even make it on my Facebook page. I've set, like right now, I'm talking to 3 different people about 2 of them are Bigfoot experiences or sightings, encounters, and one we have no idea what it is yet. It almost fits the bill of the old West Virginia white thing that you hear about, and so.
Okay. So have you actually talked to anybody that had experiences with some type of extraterrestrial from West Virginia?
Yes. I've had people tell me they've seen little gray or little graves and stuff like that in their homes. The one encounter, it wasn't a gray. The one encounter I actually talked to the folks and went to the house and done an investigation was actually in Harrison County. And this gentleman, I'll just fill you in how it took place. He contacted me and said, "Hey, I seen something strange, and I believe I seen an alien or a reptilian type creature. Could you come out and, or would you mind coming out?" And I said, "Sure." And I went to his house and we talked, and you could tell he was visibly shaken, by what he saw. He described, or he started into telling me that and I went in their house. I just fill you in. There's a kitchen as you walk in the front door. The living room's straight through the dining room's in front of the front door. As you walk through, there's the living room. Then you turn right. There's a kitchen, and then there's this narrow stairway that went up to 2 bedrooms upstairs. And he and his wife had just had their first child. I forget how the child was at the time I was there, but they had just put the baby to sleep, and they had a German Shepherd that was downstairs. They had a gate across the stairs and a gate across the dining room. So the German Shepherd stayed in the kitchen area and in the washroom area. And he said that the German Shepherd just started going nuts. He thought his first thought was, anger because he was going to wake the baby up.
Mm-hmm.
So he looked down the stairs to like kind of hush the dog, and he noticed the dog standing looking toward the dining room over the gate as if something or somebody was maybe in the house. So he quickly went down the stairs, and as he turned at the bottom of the stairs and stepped across the gate, he looked in the window across his dining room, and he said, "What I seen was something I've never thought ever existed." He said, "This thing looked like a head of a person, but had scales and yellow eyes and had slits up and down on its eyes,
Oh, wow.
and had like these ridges across the top of its head." And he said it looked like a person with lizard skin.
Did you ever figure out what it was?
No. And I mean, I'm friends with the MUFON, the state director of MUFON here in West Virginia, and we discussed it. And he said it sounds like he had a reptilian sighting. So that's the best thing that we may.
So did that thing eventually go away, I guess?
He only seen it the one time.
Okay.
And he still thought he still thought it was somebody messing with him, playing a joke, where he was living, because there was other houses around. And he said, well, somebody must have had a mask on or something. And he jumped the gate, ran toward it. And if you open the door to go outside, as soon as you open the door, the edge of the porch is there. He can lean out and look. And it was an open yard. And, it took him like 2 or 3 seconds to get across there and look. And he said when he looked around the house, there was nothing there. And there was nobody running off or anything. And then he was really shaken when I had him go out, or have me go out
Mm-hmm.
and stand in the same spot, because he thought, oh, it couldn't have been that tall. But then he realized after I was out there that it had to be anywhere from 6 to 7 feet tall to look through where he was looking at in the window.
Yeah. See, I think recently I had an experience with a type of ET, and I was not comfortable with it. You know what I mean?
Right.
I did not. That's something that, like, if I don't ever see it again, I'll be good. I've
Right.
seen a lot of things in the sky, especially in Point Pleasant, and this was years ago. But even in Jackson County, when I was little, I was probably 5. I saw this huge thing in the sky with lights, and it was close to the ground. It wasn't really high up. So I've seen some stuff up there, but that's kind of one of the aspects of the paranormal that I'm kind of like,
Yeah.
I don't want to kind of delve into that. They can stay where they're at.
Right.
So do you think that people that have these negative experiences with Bigfoot or Sasquatch, do you think it could be a different type of cryptid, that they're just mistaken for it because maybe they're unaware of it?
My theory is, like I said, and I'll say it's just a theory, because there's a lot of researchers that won't listen to anything that has anything strange to do with Bigfoot at all.
Right.
They call it, the whatever you want to call it, the woo and whatnot. And I guess because of my paranormal background, I'll listen to everything. So there are times when I'll take stories, and I don't think some of the stuff that they're seeing is Bigfoot related. There may be something that's looking like that, but I believe that if Bigfoot does exist, put it this way, if it does exist, in my heart, I think it is possibly, it is a primate, and some of this other stuff is just maybe something completely different, whether it is something extraterrestrial or whatnot.
Right. Because usually, like, when I talk to people, it's like, sometimes I'll relay other people's stories, but it's usually from experience, like what I've seen. So, what I experience and what you experience could be two different things, but, they're both valid. I definitely think that there's other types of things out there, that people mistake for it, because it's just common that you would hear demon, ghost, or Bigfoot, and people don't look at the aspect of other things out there. I don't personally feel like, I think if somebody is threatened by Bigfoot, Sasquatch, whatever, that they've either had ill intentions, or they're kind of like maybe crossing boundaries, if they're territorial, they don't want them around. They're just kind of warning them. But I don't feel like they're negative, kind of, but it's like with spirits, it kind of goes with your intentions. Like, if you go into something with the wrong kind of attitude, you're liable to get a really bad experience.
Right.
So I don't know if when I was up there, Laurel shared a story with me, and I don't know if it was something like you had told her, but I was wondering if you could share it, because I didn't want to, because I know it's like, I don't know if it's one of those things, but if it's not, just let me know, because she was telling me about the person who saw one that was getting in their chicken coop, and the rock.
No, I don't know. I don't know about the rock, but I've taken an encounter where this thing had supposedly was getting in a chicken coop and taking chickens, and they lost several chickens. Actually, I've had that in 2 encounters, or sightings, or whatever you want to call it. I don't know what she was talking about, the rock. Maybe that was something Daniel had shared with them.
Okay, yeah, it was one that that they had thought it was, and they shot at it. The one where they had called the police or something, but I didn't feel like it. I don't.
She has a lot of people tell her things when they come in. That might be something someone told her. I'm trying to. I don't think she shared it with me yet. So.
Okay, because I didn't want to tell something if it was not my story to tell. Okay, so what do you say to people that and I don't know if you ever get like anybody that kind of trolls posts, what would you say to somebody that's like, you guys are full of crap, you're chasing fairy tales? Do you ever like engage with them, or just no? That's awesome.
If you want to just badmouth me or the person that's had their experience, and you just want to do that just to be a jerk, I don't care. I don't care how many people is on my Facebook page. I don't care if there's 2. As long as I'm helping somebody, I'll just you're gone. I'll ban you, and Now, if you want to have a discussion, that's fine. But if you just want to be straight up jerk, I'll just get rid of you.
Yeah, it happens sometimes
Yeah.
when you're dealing with this. So do you have any stories about the Mothman? Like some people that's experienced it.
Yeah, I guess we can consider it I mean, to me, it may have been a Mothman story. I talked, the gentleman's actually gone now. He passed away, but I talked to him. It's probably been 6 or 7 years ago, maybe. And he told me this story that him and his brother, well, they lived in an area in Harrison County, and he was, I think he said 13 or 14 years old. So that put it like in 62, I think it was.
Mm-hmm.
And he told me the story. He said that they had, where they lived, they had a backyard. It was a pretty good sized backyard, and they had a stream in the back that ran across. And I went to the property. I know where the property is at. And there's a stream that ran across the back of the yard, and there was the hillside that's, just typical West Virginia land. And he said that every night they had a pony they had in the backyard. They had it tied up at night and on a big tether to walk around the yard, I guess. And he said every night that pony just went crazy, was just, running around, just whinnying all the time, making all kind of racket. So him and his brother decided, and they told his mom and stuff, and because his dad had already passed away.
Mm-hmm.
And so they decided, well, we're going to stay up, or we're going to check it out. So they went out and they're looking around, and they find these odd shaped, he told me, 3-toed tracks along the creek. And it looked like something had been dragging behind these, or along beside or behind or whatever, these tracks. And they were thinking it looked like a chain, like someone had been dragging a chain. So they went over to the neighbor's house and talked to the neighbor and asked him. I said, "Hey, have you seen anything? Something's been messing with actually the pony's name was Rusty." He said something messes with Rusty every evening. He said, so the neighbor told him, said, "Well, maybe it's a bear." He said, because some friends of his, neighbors up the road, had said that they had lost some livestock, whether it was chickens and a couple sheep or something like that. I forget what exactly it was. And they said, okay. He said, and they asked him, well, by any chance, has anybody messed around your property and taken any chains from your property? And he said, I hope the hell not. So they went into his barn, and he went over to where his chains were, and every one of his chains were there. Nothing was missing. So they decided, okay, we're going to look into this ourselves even more. And him and his brother decided if they heard anything, the next night they were going outside. So next night, I forget what time it was. It was late. I think he said midnight or after. And the horse started making all kind of racket. They, the brother was older. He was like 3 or 4 years older. His brother grabbed a shotgun. He had a 12-gauge shotgun. And the other gentleman grabbed a flashlight. He said, he goes, "You remember the flashlights?" Because I mean, I've seen them because I used to deal with antique stuff. And he said there was flashlights you could have. They were silver, and you had just a little button you pushed, and it would flash, or you can turn it on and off. It was a solid. He said, kind of looked like a space age flashlight. And I'm like, yeah, I've seen those. And he said, I had one of those that I won at the local fair. And he said, so I grabbed it, and off we started out the door. And he said, as they started out, their older sister's like, well, I'm going with you. You can't go out there by yourself and whatnot. So she went with them, and they, against, their, they didn't want her to go. So they went outside, and they're looking around, and they settled the horse, or settled the pony down, and they started up along the hillside. They started walking up the hillside, and they started hearing something crashing in the woods, like coming down toward them. And they stopped, and he says, I took the flashlight, pointed in that direction, and he said, that's when I seen this thing standing there in the woods, with big red eyes. Look, its head was come down to its shoulders. He said it had no regular neck or head. Looked like it had wings up above its back, and it waddled instead of walked. He said it waddled back and forth coming down the hill. And he said, that's when I turned to my brother, had the gun. He said, shoot it. You know, he said, shoot that son of a bitch, shoot it. He said, and after he said that, he realized his brother wasn't there. His brother had already taken off, ran down the hill, left him there, and he went to take off running himself and realized, hey, my sister's laying on the ground. She passed out. She fainted from seeing this thing, or it caused her to faint, or whatever, you know. And he had to pick her up, drag her by the arm, and drag her down the hill. And I talked to him, and I asked him about Bigfoot, and because I thought my first thought, you know, was Bigfoot. You know, maybe the wing thing he seen on the back was something else. And he said, no. He said, I know what that is. He said, I remember the Patterson and Gimlin film and all that. You know, I remember that as a kid. It wasn't anything like that. And I said, have you ever heard of Mothman? And he said, no. And there's still people in West Virginia have no idea what Mothman is.
Yeah.
And he's like, no. He said, no, I've never, I don't even know what you're talking about. And I showed him a picture. You see some of the older pictures. And it was, the one I did show him was from Gray Barker had done a magazine, and there was a drawing in it of the same way. The head was down, and you could look at his face, and he visibly turned white. He said, that's what I saw. Well, this was in like 62 or 63. So like 3 or 4 years before Point Pleasant. So that's, and it's always made me think, or I always had to question, well, what was this thing dragging? If it did, you know, he said it had a drag mark. Was it actually dragging a chain for some reason? Was this some kind of weird experiment that went wrong? And that's what this creature was. And it was, you know, somewhere tied up. I don't know, but it was just odd that it seemed like he thought it was dragging a chain or something behind it.
Yeah, so did they ever see it again?
No, that was the first and last time they seen it. First and only, I mean.
So have you had any experiences with Mothman yourself or anything like that?
Well, no, I can't. I'm not going to say Mothman. I had an experience that led to me being interviewed for a small town monsters film, the Mothman Legacy of Fear. But I don't know if the reason Seth interviewed me was because my experience that I had was like something from Mothman of Point Pleasant that he interviewed somebody else. But I don't feel it was Mothman in particular, but it was something that I seen that
have you explored the bunkers and all that stuff in Point Pleasant? Okay.
Yeah.
Last time I was in the bunkers, somebody had made like a big pentagram out of spray paint in one of them.
Yeah.
They're creepy though, I think, just because they're dark and kind of cold. But
the echo in them what's crazy.
Right.
If you've never been there, you have no idea what I'm talking about. But if you have, you do.
I tried to run the Necrophonic app in there, and it was just you almost couldn't even hear it. Have you been there at night? I've never went at night. I would love to go in there at night.
Yeah, it's weird. It's creepy, not only because of the stories and stuff there, but because some of the stories I've heard from locals and other people that's been there that have run into nefarious people there at nighttime.
Oh, so okay. I've always heard the stories of like the Appalachian feral people.
No, not feral people.
Just I thought you said feral. What is it?
No, people up to no good.
Okay. Yeah. I thought you were talking about the feral people.
Oh, I know what you mean. I've heard that was recently brought on my radar recently, or in the past few months.
I know one of the big ones was like, don't whistle at night.
Yeah.
And go in the woods alone and all this stuff. And I'm like, I live in the woods. What are you doing? Like creeping me out. So we have a question from Nana. She says, has Les ever encountered a Dogman or any Dogman reports?
I've had a couple. It's not very many. I've never encountered one. I can tell you that there was two that I took reports on that happened within a mile and a half of each other, pretty much about the same time, but these people never knew each other and never discussed it. And they were and it's only probably about 3 or 4 miles from right here where I live. I also took one, which I feel may have been a Dogman, from the 1950s. And it's, again, probably 3 or 4 miles from here, but in the opposite direction.
So, have you explored over at the Hatfield Cemetery?
I have not been there. It's on my bucket list. I really want to go. I've been wanting to go there now for 3 or 4 years.
When you go, holler at me. I'm telling you, that place is like when we were, and I think it was like either a hellhound or some type of dogman, when what was after us. And it was about a year and a half ago. It was daytime. We were up there, it's a hike, it's up that hill. And it's one of those hills that's like, if you have to run, you're probably going to fall. Like it's a tuck and roll kind of hill.
Right.
It was my daughter and me and my friend and my mama. We're just kind of walking out of there and we hear paws like running at us, and you could hear it and it's snarling and growling and, this crazy noise, and there's nothing there. We freaked out. I had just stopped filming but I was not thinking, hey, let me grab my camera real quick. And, it was like that fight or flight, we ran out of there. And I've been back a few times since then trying to see if I can figure it out. And I always get Bigfoot when I'm like using the app, like the Necrophonic app or Spirit Box. And the last time I was there, it said Hellhound, Dogman a few times. That place has so much energy. It is unreal. There's been claims that people see Devil Lance come down off of his stone at night and walk down the hill. And with the energy there, I would not doubt it at all. I don't think you're supposed to be up there at night. They have a sign up that says like it's closed at dusk. I don't think it's because they don't want people visiting graves. I think it's because of the wildlife and just whatever lurks out there. You're isolated. There's no cell phone signal. You're not calling for help. Nobody's going to hear you. But if you ever get the chance to go, definitely go. It's cool. It's creepy.
Yeah, the whole thing about him coming off his monument and walking was what was brought to my attention and what sparked my interest to go in there. That's pretty cool sounding. So,
see, my plan was like when it starts to stay daylight a little longer, I want to go up like when it's still daylight, like say like 7:30, 8 o'clock, and then kind of hang out till it gets dark, and then kind of walk off at night. But I would have to have people with me because usually I go places alone, but I don't know if I want to do that one alone. It's definitely creepy. It's hard to kind of investigate there because it's a tourist attraction. So at any given day, you might get, like I'll use dowsing rod sometimes, or you might get a little bit done. Then you have people talking really loud or asking you a ton of questions. What are you doing here? It's a very busy place. So you have to, something that could take 30 minutes to film or investigate takes you, sometimes 2 hours, but it's amazing. You would love it. Let's see. So what was you mentioned the West Virginia, the white man, or what was it called? The white thing? Yeah. What is that? Can you tell us?
This is a little book I wrote, and I'll just read to you what I wrote in that.
Okay.
Part of it. This is from my research. It says the white thing isn't. I'm going to put my glasses on. I can't see it at all. I'm getting old. It says the white thing is an enigma that has been the subject of fireside tales in Appalachia for centuries. First with the settlers and now with people present day. Though to derive from the native Cherokee lore of mysterious white wolves that would appear to those on death's bed, it has also become known as the white devil, white dog, or devil dog. It's described as a powerful beast with dog-like features covered in stark white fur, having immense fangs and sharp claws that could rip apart any man or beast. There are even accounts of it having piercing red eyes that glow like the fires of hell, hence the name devil dog. But not only is it seen as a dog, but it seems like this white thing it takes form of many different creatures. It's been written about in several books. It may be a dog shape or bear shaped, or even some people that talk about the sheep squatch, or call it the white, which sheep squatch is a story that, kind of maybe a not so genuine story, but are considered the white thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like one of the story, or one of the things that I'm actually investigating now could fit in that description of the white thing. This lady talks about seeing something that stood 4 to 5 feet tall at the shoulder. It was in a residential area. It had long flowing white hair, stood on all four legs, and by what she thinks, it could have had possible canine looking features, because she didn't get a real good look at it because it's actually turning away, she said. But when she actually turned to look again, as she drove by it and turned again and to look, it was gone. It like disappeared or whatever, and was just nowhere to be seen. But like I said, it's been in, Appalachian folklore for many years, as far as these white creatures seen in and around the mountain areas.
So since it's shapeshifting, that kind of sounds like sort of like what a skinwalker would do. But skinwalkers are mainly like in the Midwest. Do you think that it could be something like a skinwalker?
I'm not sure. I mean, a lot of Native American tribes believe the skinwalker is more of a demonic type thing, and it's out.
True.
It may shape shift, in the Southwest and stuff, but I don't know if that's what this may be. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
because mainly all the stories I've heard, it either has long flowing white hair or curly white hair. It always has something like that.
Yeah, that's definitely interesting. I've actually never heard anybody, talk about that,
Yeah.
seeing one or anything like that around here. There's definitely a lot of stuff in West Virginia, though, and I think even shows like Mountain Monsters, how they kind of were going after things around the tri-state area, kind of highlighted a lot of it.
Mm-hmm.
I would love to meet up with him again. I met him once, but I would love to to go out on a journey with them. And
I've,
you
I,
too, like if we ever got a chance to kind of meet up and go looking for some cryptids or something, that would be fun.
I've met them all on several occasions. The last time I met him was this year at Crypticon. Talked to him for a while. Uh, Buck was cool because he actually wore one of my shirts, hanging around. Because I
That's
have my
awesome.
shirts made for my page, and uh, but they're good guys. They're really genuine good guys. Uh, I walked up to them at their table and said, "Hey, I'm doing a thing for a cancer charity in Harrison County. I'm putting together a basket for a cryptid basket for a raffle for the money proceeds to go through an auction to this cancer charity." And they're like, yeah, they're signing stuff for me. They give me a big poster. Everyone I'm signed it, and just I were absolutely, gracious enough to do it without second guessing it. And so, yeah, they're all good guys.
Yeah, they're awesome. Trapper actually signed a shirt for my daughter, a Bigfoot shirt, back several years back. So
Yeah.
that was cool. Got my picture taken with him. That's as far as I've went. But I would love to. I would love to, talk to them too again because they're out in the woods looking too.
Well,
Um,
I mean, a lot of you have people like, oh, that show's fake. It shows fake. It's a scripted show. Yeah, it's a scripted show. It
mhm.
definitely is a scripted show. But what I like about it is whoever's doing the research. And yeah, I've talked to Huckleberry. He does go out in the woods, but and they investigate stuff. But whoever does the research for the show or actually pulls, some local legends or folklore, and integrates that into the show. So I like that as far as a folklore researcher or whatever you want to call it. I actually respect that.
Yeah, same. I mean, yeah, like you said, it's definitely scripted, but they're talking about things that people have seen.
Right.
And they're going out in it. Personally, I think they're a little noisy sometimes when they're going out there trying to trap things, but it's entertainment too. And you can learn a lot by, just listening to people's stories and where their sightings are, because I do, from what I've looked up, what they show about like who saw something where, that information is actually true. So they're actually showing, actual sighting areas and stuff. So if one of the moderators could drop the link to Les's YouTube channel, it is West Virginia Cryptids and Strange Encounters.
Mm-hmm.
And I did catch the cave one. I'm like, how do you guys find these caves? Because I can go drive around forever and I'd never find these things.
That is a really well-known cave. It's actually right outside of Elkins in Randolph County.
Okay, so I'm farther down from that. I've been trying to find the cemetery, the Hawk's Nest Cemetery. And have you ever been there? The cemetery at the bottom of the hill. It's where they kind of when they had that silica mine and all these people died, they just kind of put them underground and didn't put any nameplates up. They just left them there. And I don't know. I just can't seem to figure out how to find it. And I lose cell phone signal when I get there, so I can't like GPS it. I guess I don't know. I'm bad with directions, so. But I would like to find that one. I
probably know somebody might know where it's at. I mean, they live in that area. I can or know that area pretty well. I can ask.
Yeah, I would love to kind of check that out. So what are your plans coming up? Do you have any kind of investigations you're planning on doing, or anything any more events you're doing or anything?
Like I said, I'm talking to 3 different people now. If I can get time, I got one of them is in, I don't know what, one's in Lincoln County, one's in Marshall County. The other one, I can't remember what county it is, but it's near Lesage, West Virginia. It's between Charleston, Point Pleasant area.
I've heard of some Bigfoot sightings in Lincoln County.
Nice. Yeah, but that's where the lady supposedly had maybe the white thing story or encounter. Let me think. But I'm always, if I can get out to explore, I go out and explore. As far as events, people have invited me to events, but I like doing them. But I like talking to folks. But I'm kind of a little bit of an introvert too, so the whole events things, I'm kind of right. I don't mind going to them, and the ones that I've been invited to, they've asked me to speak at one of them, and I may do that, but the other one I may not, because they're putting on 2 events. And my buddies, the Moth Boys, they're putting on an event in Morgantown, Cryptid Bash again this year. They asked me if I was coming. I told them, I said I was just coming as a spectator. I didn't want to set up. Other than it was just it's a jumping. Their event was just like crazy busy jumping and I don't know. It was a little much for me sometimes. But I do put on. We will be putting on the Bigfoot Museum, and I'm helping there with the Bigfoot Festival in June, the last weekend of June, and then in Morgantown I usually have my own event, a small one in Cheat Lake in Morgantown. Okay,
what's that one called?
West Virginia Case Para Expo. Well, I couldn't get that right.
I may have seen that one. Looking up things around here. As long as my goats don't go into labor early, I'm going to go to the one in Sutton. We have a question. Are there any rakes in West Virginia that you've heard of?
Well, it depends. Is there anything that fits the description of a rake? Which mainly the rake was things started on Creepypasta. That name basically, but there have been creatures fitting that description seen prior to that, and before, prior to that, and since, so I guess it's things like that have gotten that generic name, the rake. But yeah, I've had a couple. The one I can't remember all the details right offhand, but the other one I can remember most of them. And it was actually in uh, Upshur County, or is it Upshur? Yeah, it's between Weston and Buchanan. I can't remember what. I mean, is Weston and Buchanan the same county?
Um,
I'm like
I don't
lost on
know
it.
because it's a little ways up. It's a
Yeah,
little farther.
yeah. But yeah, this gentleman got a hold of me. I talked to him probably, I don't know, an hour on the phone. He was coming back from Buchanan and he was describing where he was at. And I knew exactly where he's talking about because I travel that road a lot. And he said he was coming down the long hill, and standing along the road was this creature, and that's what he called it. He said, "I swear it was a rake," and he said it was skeletal white. It had really long fingers with spikes on its fingers, hunched
Oh
over,
wow!
yeah, and had like no basically like white skin looking, but it was skeleton looking. And when he drove by, he looked at it, and he said it was big enough when it was hunched over that he could see, because it was right along the edge of the road. He said it was like right on the edge, that he could see not only through his window, but look up kind of through this big sunroof in his car. That big, I guess the top of his car had a pretty good sized piece of glass, and he could see the head of it above his car through his sunroof. But yeah, that was one thing that fits that description of what people call the rake.
Yeah, I mean, I like seeing strange things, but I'd probably be out on that one.
The other one, I don't remember all the details, but the other one was, I don't remember where it was right offhand. But the girl come out of her home. She come out. She she would come out of the house to smoke her cigarette, or I think is what it was, and she seen this thing setting in the tree over at the edge of the yard, and she described it as basically what that guy said too, kind of the same thing.
So speaking of these strange creatures, just because I'm paranoid of this, have you ever had a black-eyed child or black-eyed kid story from West Virginia?
Let me think. There was one, but it's been a while back. I never talked to the person. They just sent it through Messenger. But if I remember some of the details, she heard something on the porch, and then something knocked on the door, and she looked out the window or the door, or opened the door through the screen door, and there was like two kids there, and they looked up and had black eyes. That's as much as I can remember of it, because she wasn't. Like I said, I never talked to her personally, like through over the phone or anything. I just remember some of the details when she sent. But yeah, there was one that I remember for sure.
Yeah, that's one thing. I try not to think about it too much because I'm trying not to manifest that stuff. But
Yeah.
Years ago, and this was probably like over a decade ago, we're at home, sitting up late, and it's like 2:30 in the morning, and we hear a knock on the door, and I'm like, oh crap, that's the first thing I thought. And there's this girl there, and this car parked full of people in the road. And I live out in the middle of nowhere. And they're like, can I use your phone? No, sorry.
Yeah.
If you need 911, I'll call them, but nope.
Yeah. Yeah. No.
Like, I'll help anybody in need, but you ain't.
Yeah.
Not when there's that many people in your car. Like, y'all can just drive right out the holler, go to Speedway. You know what I mean?
No, I did hear one story, but I can't remember if it was from West Virginia. It was a secondhand story. A guy had answered his door. Because had a knock, and it was the typical what you hear the black-eyed kid stories. Can we come in? Can we use the phone? And he actually let them in. And the one asked, where can I use your restroom? And he said, yeah. And it said it's down the hallway. And he turned. What I remember the person telling me the story. The kid turned down the hallway, and he turned to show the kid down the hallway. As he turned back, the other woman is like right there in front of him, looking at him with black eyes. And he said I guess what I remember the guy telling me is this. He said, what do you want? And this kid looked at him and says, we're here to collect you.
Oh my
And
goodness. No.
and he was, it completely scared him to death. He ran into the kitchen, shut the door, and something, was able to lock the door and jumped out the window in the kitchen or the dining room or something and ran to the neighbor's house. And then they went back later. There was nobody there at his house.
Oh my goodness. That's wild. But I don't doubt that happened at all,
Yeah.
That's wild. Better him than me. Did anything ever happen to him after that you know of?
No, like I said, that was a secondhand story. I don't
Okay.
remember. I don't remember if it was from West Virginia or not. I just remember that somebody I knew come up to me and was telling me that story.
All right, we have one more question here. What's Les's favorite paranormal evidence he has ever gotten?
I really like audio. Probably. Okay, there will be two of them. I actually, several years ago, I had a small team. We're kind of disbanded now, but we used to call Midnight Talkers Paranormal Group, and we used to go to this old farmhouse, and everybody called it the Blackshear Mansion. It was built in the 1880, 86 or 87, somewhere in that neighborhood, and it had become well known for paranormal activity. And there was the lady owned a house, but she rented it to a couple, and that couple had experienced quite a bit of stuff there. And she had gotten a hold of a local group, and they went in and done some investigating. Well, I was friends with that group, so we ended up was able to get in there as well. Well, that couple ended up moving. They moved to Lewisburg, but they still rented that house because they didn't want anybody else living there. They wanted us as me, myself, and the other group, a place to be able to research and investigate because they want to know what was going on. So the last time that I was in there, we had quite a bit of stuff happen. Two of the members was up in the upstairs bedroom, and the weird thing about this house, when you would go in, you would find change, stacks of pennies, stacks of dimes, stacks of everywhere. They would be across the doorway, across mantles, but there was nobody living there. But you would find this change. Where they were these two members were upstairs, and they were in the master bedroom, and they were sitting on the edge of the bed, and they were asking questions, doing their whole EVP stuff. And all of a sudden, this change just comes flying off the mantle, hits the wall and everything. So that got our attention, and we started doing some other stuff. And that's back before you had the SB7, you had the Hack Shack, for your ghost box, So I did that, and we were letting it go and doing things with it and asking questions. And it came across light a stove, just clear as can be. It says light a stove. We had no idea what that meant, okay. So at the time I was a truck driver. I drove truck for a good bit of years. I drove for about 25 years. I drove truck, and I'm sitting in Ironton, Ohio. I'm getting ready to get loaded. It was like 6 a.m, and my brother calls me, and he said, "Hey, you won't be investigating the Blackshear Mansion any longer." I'm like, "Why?" He said, "Because it's burning to the ground." There was no electric in that place. They still have never found out why the house burnt down. The state fire marshal actually knew that I had been there, came to me because they were completely confused of how this happened. When any pictures I had, interviewed me about anything, and I let him listen to that, and he said, "I'm not much of a believer in that paranormal stuff," but he said, "That is kind of strange that you get, something like that across whatever you're using. It says light a stove, and then 6 days later, it burns the ground." So that's one thing I thought was pretty, some of the best, really cool evidence I caught. The other one was a few years ago. I got contacted by a family in Clarksburg, West Virginia, and I keep saying West Virginia because I'm used to talking on other places. In Clarksburg, and they said that they were having some activity. They would hear footsteps on the stairs, which they kind of ignored a little bit. And then they saw things started to move in the house, like would move, like poltergeist type stuff. So they asked me to come over, and I went over. I took my, well, he's 16 now. At the time, he was like 14. I took my 14-year-old son with me, and they wanted to know, if we let you investigate, what are you going to be doing? So I wanted to show them. And the first thing I showed him was the spirit box. And I had it with me. I have an auxiliary cord 10 foot long. I put a speaker in the middle of the floor. And I turned it on. And I think it was like 47 seconds after turning it on, the voice comes across the spirit box, just as clear as can be. It goes, "Hey, Les," like that. The lady that was living there, because she thought everything was kind of funky and cool, because they're going. She cracks up, laughing hysterically because she hears this. So we caught that, and then we go on asking questions, and the guy that the gentleman of the house, I said, "Well, you go ahead, you ask questions, you would see what what kind of response you get." So he asked, he said, "Well, why do you want us to leave?" Well, after it says, "Hey, Les," we get another one says, "Get out." And he goes, "Well, why do you want us to leave?" Spirit box goes, does a whole static thing for a few seconds. And all of a sudden it just goes, "Tiffany," just clear as can be. Well, what's cool is Tiffany is his wife sitting on the couch right there.
Oh, that's awesome.
With us. So like, okay, that caught my interest because one, it knew my name. So we know we're dealing with something intelligent. Then it says her name. And then it goes a little bit longer, we're asking more questions. And it says a-hole, just as clear as can be. And I'm like, okay, who's an a-hole? A few more seconds, it goes, "Jordan," just like that. Jordan's their daughter sitting with their mom, Tiffany, right there on the couch.
Oh, gosh.
So I'm like, okay, you guys, you got something going on here that's not a residual thing. I don't believe it's, an intelligent thing. So we shut that off, and they asked, "Well, okay, what else should we do?" So I used dowsing rods as well. I said, well, let's see what we can figure out. And I stood in the middle of the living room, and I said, "Okay, I want you to show me where you're at." These dowsing rods pointed straight out of the living room door. I walked to the doorway. They slammed too real hard to the right. I follow them to the right. We get to the bottom of the stairs. They slam to the left, and it leads me all the way to the top of the stairs. And it goes all the way up, and it gets at this house. It had like 3 steps, landing, flight of stairs, landing, then 2 or 3 steps again. And it's an old house, and there's a hallway that runs with a banister in front of all the rooms upstairs. Well, I get up there at dowsing rods. It takes me straight into their daughter's room. Takes me over to the corner, and crosses right there. And I'm looking, and I see a bucket on the floor, and there's water dripping in the bucket. It's not raining. And I look up, and there's a huge black spot on the ceiling. This water's dripping out of the ceiling. I'm like, that's kind of odd. And then all of a sudden, as I'm standing there looking at this, they spin all the way around, slap me on the arm, takes me back outside or out in the hallway, turns to the right, goes down, turns to the right, takes me into another bedroom, and takes me to one side of the bed and stops right there. And I asked the folks of the house, I said, whose bedroom is this? And they're like, "This is our bedroom." I said, "Have you ever experienced in here?" And the husband's like, "Yeah, I have, had some experiences here, hearing stuff and whatnot." So, I mean, you're talking evidence, but this is like a whole story though. So immediately I'm like, okay, I need to get somebody in to help y'all. I knew some people that would come in and help do a cleansing. I got a hold of them, and I told them, I said, they'll come back. They'll be here in a week. We'll come back in a week. I had talked to a psychic friend of mine and let her hear the recording. And she told me, she goes, "It's not a demonic thing. This is a pretty nasty male entity that is in that house. And he preferred that every woman in that house be dead than live in his house." So I said, okay. So I told the lady of the house that. And that's when she looked at me. She goes, "I need to tell you something else. There's more to what's going on." We moved in here 4 years ago. shortly after we moved in, it seems like my husband has changed. He's not like my husband. He is, but his personality has changed. He's never been physically abusive, but he can be verbally abusive. He can be kind of mean to me and my daughter. He doesn't do it to the boys, but he does it to the girls. I said, "Oh, really?"
I know where this
So
is
I
going.
actually pulled him.
Go
I
ahead.
actually pulled him aside, talked to him, and he's like, "Oh." And then he finally admitted. He said, "Yeah." I said, "How do you feel when you're here?" He said, "Man, I feel pissed all the time." He said, "I'm upset. I'm angry." He said, "They don't have to do anything, but they just irritate me." He said, "When I'm not here, it's different. When I'm coming home, I could just feel like I'm getting aggravated." I said, "Well, I think something is manipulating you somehow." So I said, "My friends will be here, and we'll do a cleansing on the house." I talked to I got a hold of them, met with them, didn't tell them much. She's sensitive. And I told her, I said, "I just want you to go in and see what's going on and see what you feel." She goes in. I have her go in first. I told her husband, I said, "You follow her and I'll stay behind you both." Immediately, she goes up the stairs. She gets to the last two steps for the second landing, and it looks like she's going to fall backwards and grabs a hold of the railing. And her husband's like, "Are you okay?" She goes, "Yeah, somebody just tried to push me down the stairs." She immediately goes into the corner of the daughter's room. She said, "There's something here. I can feel it." She turns around, goes, and this is without me telling her anything, goes to the same side of the bed that I went to with the dowsing rods. And immediately she just like stops, and she's got her eyes closed. She's got her hands like this, and like she's talking, mentally, whatever,
Right.
but not verbally actually doing it. Like she's having an argument. By her gestures, it looked like an argument. Then she turns around and looks at me, and she goes, "Yeah, he's pissed that I'm here. He doesn't want me here, and he called me every name in the book, and he told me he's going to kill me." So she went through and they done. I mean, they were there for 2 or 3 hours, done cleansing and binding. What all they did. And even the folks of the house was like, "Wow, it feels different. This feels completely different now." So I told him as we were leaving, as we were, departing the house, I told him, I was like, "Now, this may not take care of it. This may just be a fix for a temporary fix. It may have to be done again, may have to be more than one time. I'll keep in touch." I did. A week later, I called, said, "Hey, how's everything going?" And she's like, "Everything's great. The house feels different. We don't hear anything. My husband's great. His attitude's different." I'm like, "Awesome." 2 weeks later, same thing. 3 weeks later, we're hearing the footsteps. We're hearing the footsteps on the stairs again. I was like, "Okay, give me time to get a hold of my friends. We'll come back and do it again." I got a hold of my friends. They couldn't come for a few days, and whatnot. So I called her back after this was like a week later after I got a hold of them, or a few days after I got home, and I called her. It was almost a week later, and I got a hold of them. It's like, "Hey, they can come back and here soon. Just be patient, and we'll try to help you." And that's when she told me. She goes, "Never mind. We were out. We moved. We packed everything up and left. We left the house." And
Yeah.
I know where they live now. I still keep in touch with them, and they've not had any issues since. The house is, yeah.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and bring up Connor and Matt. Connor is Bigfoot Anonymous. And then we have Matt from Squatch in South Florida.
How's it going?
What's up, everybody?
Yeah.
So how's it going?
Good. You guys?
Good.
Oh,
Good.
incredible, man. It's awesome hearing a lot of your stories, how some of them correlate with a lot of my Ohio childhood and then a lot of our recent research down here in the Sunshine State swamps.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, Connor lived near Helltown, Ohio, and that's on my bucket list this year. I want to go to Helltown and see what's up with that. So that's going to happen sometime.
Soon enough. And I'm really excited to visit BF Bud and you guys as well, just because we can hit the Serpent Mounds. Hocking Hills has tons of strange caves. I want to hit both museums in Sutton. I also want to rub the Mothman plaque and statue, of course. And also can't wait to cross the Ohio River once again. It's been a few years.
You got to touch the Mothman butt.
Oh, yeah.
That's a big thing when everybody goes up there taking pictures of the butt on the statue.
I accidentally took a picture of his butt one time, but I didn't mean to.
Les, have you ever been a part of the conference there or the Mothman Festival? Have you ever been a vendor or a speaker?
No, I was telling Amber, I'm not much I mean, I do small events, but I'm not much of a speaker. I freeze up, but I got a lot of friends that go there. So I usually go every year. But I think this year, I'm not sure if I'm going to make it. I was invited to come to, what's it called? Creason Sanatorium in Ohio or Pennsylvania, I mean, to come up there. So I think it's alternating. I think it's the week after, but I may go there instead.
Nice.
Now, Les, you'll be speaking at the Bigfoot Festival too, though, right? Will you be doing that?
I'm not sure. I'm kind of in charge of getting the speakers. I don't know if I'll do anything this year.
Wait,
now last year I did.
Both of us.
Last year I did a round table with some folks, and that I'm more comfortable doing that. I'm more comfortable talking with folks and answering questions and interacting than I am sitting and speaking to people, because I don't feel like I'm not a teacher. I'm more like I just like to talk to people.
But that's how people learn. You know, somebody could be relating to your story and then they don't feel so crazy. They're like, you know, even if they don't say anything, you know, just inspiring one person or letting them know that they're not alone. That means a lot to so many people. And that's what I think we're all collectively trying to do here, is just kind of bring awareness and the sense of kind of a normalcy to the paranormal and cryptid field.
Yeah, absolutely.
Guys, I'm going to step away for just a second. I'll be right back, but y'all go ahead.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, for sure.
Now
I'm kind of a little unconventional when it comes to doing like any speaking event. Most people look at me funny because I don't stand up there. I actually grab a chair, turn around backwards, and sit down and just chat with folks. So,
right, part of the campfire. I like that vibe. Once I have the stage to myself and they don't have me constricted to the table, trust me, I'm gonna be getting people in headlocks and showing people hands-on research. So I'm really excited for that over in June down here in Sunshine State. But yeah, man, if you're looking for some researchers and you make it worth our while, at least gas-wise, I know me, Matt, and a couple other young bucks down here in Florida, man, that are shaking down the roots of these cypress trees.
Yeah, a couple of my friends were just down there. I actually got a friend down there now that lives down there. His name's Denver Michaels. I don't know if you guys know who Alex Petikoff is.
Oh, of course,
I know who it is.
Yeah. He was just down there with Eli Watson. They're friends of mine. They were down there recently.
Yeah, they got me on camera, and hopefully they got my good side. I'm really looking forward to seeing their footage from the conference, but they also have been really busy, boots on the ground. They've been to the Everglades, a little bit of the Big Bend area. They spent time in Ocala, so definitely much respect to them. And Small Town Monsters, man, that's so dope that you were in a Small Town Monsters film. I actually came from the same town as Seth Breelove, and so 330, and it's wild that how small the world is when you spread your wings.
Yeah, it is. I actually, the last thing I was doing with Seth was one of the Bigfoot projects he's doing, this series. I've just done that with him November last year.
Nice.
I went up here to I don't know if you've watched that, where he goes to that cabin and hangs out the cabin and does it. I was up there for 3 days with him.
Very cool. In Minerva.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, man, the Minerva monster.
That's big awesome.
On. I think that creature is responsible for all that French gold going missing. And the original Minerva monster is where I actually met Seth. He did a screening at my local library, and I went solo with a backpack on, wearing camo, and asking questions. And I was like, is Sasquatch 1 foot in this dimension and the other in that one? And I was really onto something. And now it's evolved so far, man. And now if he comes to the Panhandle to research some of these recent captures and really next level stories of telepathy and up close and personal with Donnie Miller. A lot of crazy encounters are happening in the Panhandle, Florida.
Yeah.
So about time we reconnect our Ohio roots here soon. But what's up, Amber? How have you been? Any recent experiences with the Woodman?
No, I've been busy down the road working on the house that has the video of the fairies or whatever they are. I think that's some amazing footage.
Hey, right when he was saying that there's piles of money in this house, my head was going to fairies, Goonies, Gremlins, just the little people in general. So I definitely think there's a lot going on right in your guys' foothills with, people that are bigger than the treetops and then things that sink into the dirt somehow, like little Ewoks.
Yeah, I know I've seen some crazy stuff just in my own woods, and there's a lot out there. There's
I
definitely
actually just had an encounter with some fae this past weekend. It was pretty wild and very frustrating again, but that's what they like to do to me. So we went to the Renaissance Festival, me and my family, and my wife, she's one of those types that like never buys anything for herself. She found this like handmade kiln fired necklace that had like a moon on it and some stars, right? And after she had got that, we had spent a bunch of time talking to these ladies, and these ladies had an entire like fairy fae booth thing going on, and I'm telling you, I could feel the power emanating off of these women, and it was awesome. We ended up standing there hanging out and talking to them for like an hour. And I got one of their business cards. I'm going to end up having one of them on my show coming up in the next couple months. And we get all the way home, and we had taken her necklace. It was in a little brown paper bag, and we'd taken the necklace, and we put it underneath the baby stroller. And we get all the way home, and we start unpacking all of our stuff, and we realize the necklace is missing. And I'm like, oh, no. So we ripped the entire house apart. We ripped the car apart. We ripped the stroller apart. Nothing. So I said to her, I was like, listen, do you want me to go back and try and look for it? She's like, well, call them first. So I called the place up, and they were like, oh, well, if you want to come back, you're going to have to pay for another ticket again. And I was like, well, if I got to do it, I got to do it, I guess. So I went. I searching through their lost and found, couldn't find it. And I guess the guy who was the manager felt really bad for me. And he ended up giving me a free ticket to go back inside and go look around. So I had stopped over at the shop where we bought one. I was talking to the guy. He didn't have any more left. And he told me I was going to have to come back in like another week or two. I was like, Jesus, come on. So for whatever reason, I had this feeling to go back over by those ladies. So I go back over by those ladies. And lo and behold, is the brown paper bag right in front of their booth, and the necklace is there perfectly intact.
Love it.
How those things happen to me, I don't know. They love taking my stuff and moving stuff around, but I can tell you what, I definitely felt the magic that day. It was a lot of fun. It was a lot of frustrating.
So the fae took one of my pendulums a while back, and it was gone for 3 months. And then all of a sudden we get back from shopping at the grocery store and it's laying right by my front door. It was gone. But it's back now. Now they have your book, Connor. They took it out of my living room. It's gone. And 3 of my cards out of a deck. I'm waiting on them to bring those back.
That is classic. I sometimes write off stuff that I was just maybe a little too baked, but I might have some house elves around here. There's a lot of stories of them living in mounds and even digging holes in the wall underneath people's bed. My brother Tristan Smith, from Hidden Relief, a lot of people in the chat have camped with him. He's told the story many times of the house elf in his house, turning off stuff and moving it, but also an insectoid that had 6 legs that passively chased his little cousin Wyatt, like it was playing with him. So I don't know, man. It's some Men in Black little pug alien type thing, but it's pretty interesting. Les, man, I was thinking the whole time you were talking about the white thing, how it links to the goat man or the sheep squatch, up in West Virginia. And I actually interviewed one Georgia police officer that told a report from two guys, himself and his partner, about some Georgia goat man that they saw in Alabama, Florida, Georgia. It's all this panhandle area. And the famous thing is the white thing, the Alabama white thing. And I think it's just really cool how the goat man is really popular, but then it has the white man story, and it's just really wild how it all intertwines. And that was just one correlation that it's really cool that the Appalachian Trail, leads all the way down here to the Apalachicola. So man, it doesn't end, honestly, from Ohio, New York, West Virginia, all the way down to the Bay of the Gulf. So it's really impressive. Just think, all the cave systems and waterways that really link. And man, then that links to Louisiana and all the waterways in Alabama. It's wild. And that's how I think of West Virginia. It's like a highway to everything.
Yeah, there's a. I think. Do you think the Appalachian Mountains has a lot to do with it though? Like because they're so old. It's there's I think there's a lot going on. And
they're old. There's ley lines there. There's the convergence of the continent, and there's a lot of stuff that goes into that.
But I also think it lends a lot of folklore from immigrants coming. A lot of Scotch Irish here in West Virginia coming, because it's basically the same mountain range. So that folklore has come from there to here. The German folklore in Pennsylvania and parts of Maryland and things like that. So I think some of those stories brought over may have expanded out, and whether it's just folklore or actual sightings of things. But I think a lot of it started with that.
I love that. You don't hear that, honestly, very often, where the origins come from. Maybe you hear about it with like the French and the Rougarou, but man, thinking about like the Wampus cat might have something to do with Nazis and Hitler Dogman experiments. So again, draw those correlations, and then boom, it all comes together.
Yeah, it's amazing how it can all be linked back to something bigger. And it's still, people still see it and experience it today.
Yeah, there's a Blue Devil story. Sorry to interrupt, but it was a Blue Devil story in West Virginia that I was reading about, and I was it's in the 1939 and 1940, and I was trying to think like, oh, what is it, a blue alien or what? And it said it was like a Dogman type creature. It was so black that it reflected blue, probably from the water above and the water below. But that also brought me back to, Ohio, because our hometown, the mascot was the Brunswick Blue Devils, and there was tons of Dogman encounters, and we actually encountered the Wolfman when we were like 10, 12 years old. So it's really, again, really wild that just today I was like, man, Blue Devils, I didn't know that they could actually be Dogman type creatures, these werewolf beasts from the 40s. It's really, really cool.
So Les, you had talked about a little bit earlier about how you had heard of only like a handful of Dogman encounters.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't seem like it's anything that's really, pronounced here in my area. But I've only, there's other ones that might be something like a Dogman or werewolf, but I mean, I know they're supposedly different. But yeah, there's only been a handful.
Were just out of curiosity, were any of those encounters like violent in any way?
No,
they were just
the only one that might the only one that seemed like it might have some kind of malintent was actually not too far from here. I was interviewing a gentleman about his property because he was having strange stuff happen on his property, and so I went over as far to actually look into his Bigfoot stuff, and he started telling me about a story that his brother, he and his brother, because they have a 200-acre farm, he and his brother were walking on the farm road, and his brother's son was out in front, and he said his brother screams at his son, and then his brother then tells him what he saw, and he says he's seen this thing running down through the field, and it looked like a large wolf on his hind legs running through the field. He said the weirdest thing about it is I say run. He said the weirdest thing about it, he said the only thing he can equate it to was like it moved like water. It flowed across the ground, and it was heading toward his son. And that's when he screamed, and he said this thing kind of went down, kind of on 4 legs, and then it was gone. And the other one that the lady I talked to only lives 1.5 miles from him. And she describes and she was a teenager. She describes looking out her bedroom window and seeing something move. And that's when she sees this thing is like 7 foot tall, black in color. It was at nighttime, it was black in color. But she said the thing that really stuck out to her was it had yellow eyes, and it had a snout and ears like a wolf. And it where they live like in a like a flat below the main road, and the side road that comes into their home. They're like 3 or 4 feet down. This thing jumped the entire road from their yard across the road, which is 10 or 12 feet probably, into another flat, and we took off running. And she's telling me this, and I asked her, I have no idea what it was. And I said, have you ever heard of Dogman? And she said, no. And I showed her a picture that you normally find on the internet, the one standing, with his hands. It's like the typical one you find. And she about passed out. She goes, her husband grabbed her arm because she about fell. And she goes, that's absolutely what I saw.
Wow.
So,
is that the hyena type creature that you were also researching, or is that a whole different type of beast?
No, the thing there, I have no idea what that was, man. The only thing that we can find that actually looked like what this guy describes was a prehistoric canine looking thing called an Androsaurus. I think it's how you pronounce it.
That's awesome.
And yeah, and that was in Canaan Valley, and he describes it, and he said this thing comes up out of the field onto the road, grabs a deer. He said its mouth, it had a huge snout, mouth full of teeth, and it had spotted collar. And if you look at the picture, if you look at that creature up, it looks like he describes it. And I'm thinking, I straight out asked him. I said, dude, were you drinking? You doing any drugs? Or, because no, man, I was driving my truck. He said, I was driving a company truck. I'm a garbage truck driver. And I was like, okay. And I'm thinking, well, maybe he's had a time slip or something. Maybe this is what's going on. I said, what in your mind cemented that you were seeing a physical animal? Because it had to grab the deer and ran up off the road. Because I even went to the location and interviewed him, but there was no tracks. I said, what cemented in your mind that you've seen this thing, a physical animal? He said, when I went down around the turn about 1,500 feet down the road, and another one ran across the road. And I was like, so I put that online. He asked if I could put it online. And I think it was like a week later, this young lady, she gets a hold of me, sends me a message and says, hey, I'm an avid deer hunter. That's my area where I hunt. I hunt, the Canaan Valley, the wilderness, wildlife management area and stuff like that up there. And so I looked, like I do. I mean, I check anybody I talk. I looked at their Facebook, and yeah, she's a hunter. She's got her pictures of the deer and everything she hunts. And she tells me, she goes, I'm freaking out because that's exactly what I saw. I seen the same thing. And I said, well, when did you see it? And she goes, by the date you put on there, about a month after. And I was like, well, okay. She goes, I know exactly where he's at, or where you're at, where he's had his sighting. And I said, well, how far away were you? And she goes, not 500 yards from that same location.
Oh, man. So that thing was sticking around, at least for
a
month.
Yeah. And then another guy got a hold of me, said he saw something that's what he described it as, was a giant hyena. And that was in down around the Hurricane area, down around like between Huntington and Charleston. So
wow. I'm big on the Washington Wild thing from Pennsylvania, Washington, PA, right in that corner. Yeah. And that is a big Dogman type creature. And I always said a werebear. So a hyena would definitely be up that alley. My favorite report of yours, though, was the Sasquatch that ended up transforming into a deer and then running away. Oh, that is not deer.
Yeah. It was in Fayette County, West Virginia, and the guy was a truck driver. I can't remember if he was delivering or picking up at a local dairy. There was a big dairy farm, and he was involved with that. But he was coming down the road. He said there's a long straightaway, and he sees this thing walk into the road, something standing upright, and he slows down. He said he's about 75 yards away. He had his high beams on, but he can tell that this is a large, hairy, humanoid-looking thing. So he kind of lets off the brakes and starts easing toward it. And he said that's when this thing kind of turns, like it's like turning toward him and like it's going to take a couple steps or whatnot. And he said to him, it looked like it was shrinking. And then he realized it was going to all fours. But when the next thing he knows, it's a big buck deer and takes off running through the woods. So
yes,
that's awesome. I want to see that.
Yeah, there's a lot of good stories by Swamp Dweller that he's done a lot of not deer and the deer people. And that's a combination, a little bit of both. So I loved hearing that. And again, that just adds to the lore and the more myths of the Appalachian Trail.
Sweet.
Hey, Les, do you guys ever get any UFO or extraterrestrial reports at your museum?
I don't have a museum. I work with the museum, but
you work with the museum. I'm sorry,
Yeah,
I misunderstood.
I helped them get the museum. I donated all my stuff to help get that museum off the ground. I work with them as far as that. I'm kind of like the consultant, whatever you want to call me.
Okay.
But I don't think we've had any. Now, they had their own UFO sighting a couple years ago.
Oh wow!
They actually were interviewed for Small Town Monsters, The Dark Skies. So
Very cool.
Bud is asking any sightings of Bigfoot or Dogman around Walton, West Virginia. That's the area that he hunts for Bigfoot.
I don't know where Walton is, to be honest with you. You might have to tell me what county. Maybe I can look it up. Tell me what county.
Have you been up to any notable places up in Ohio, like Salt Fork or maybe Hocking Hills?
I've been to Salt Fork. Went up and just hung out for a while. Got a lot of friends that go there. Doug Waller's a friend of mine. Mary Fabian. They all do a lot of stuff up there.
Heck yeah, right up on Bigfoot Ridge.
Yeah. I'm usually by myself most of the time. My son, he goes with me every once in a while. He went with me this weekend with the cave stuff. And most of the time, I'm either my buddy Daniel will go with me sometimes, or most of the time I'm in the woods by myself. I enjoy that.
For sure. That's definitely how you open up the door and, keep the veil very thin, because once you're with a huge group, there's just a lot going on, a lot of mixed emotions. That energy in the forest might not want to appear for it unless you can, build some strong pillars with your group. And that's definitely what we reinforce and try to manifest. You have to plan your investigations. You have to see it. You have to think it. You have to feel it out even before it happens. And we're big on, it's all in, even mentally. And we loved hearing that you were using dowsing rods, just because that is
yes, I love that
main weapon right now. And I think there's incredible knowledge to be found there. I think you guys should chop it up a little bit with those.
Yeah, we definitely should.
So he said it's up 79, about an hour north of Charleston.
Right. So he's close to the Flatwoods, Braxton County, Gasaway.
Right. That's what it sounds like.
There's been I've got a couple reports from around the Sutton Lake area, but I don't know how far off he's from that. And the Centralia area. I've had a couple of reports from there.
Nice. Have you been up to Moundsville or Wheeling or gotten any reports there?
Moundsville, no. I don't think I got anything from Wheeling area. Now I do have I have stuff from Marshall County, which is outside, is where Moundsville is, but it's a little ways from Moundsville.
I saw you did some research on the giant bones that were discovered. I've done tons of narration of a bunch of articles of Moundsville in West Virginia, or Moundsville and Wheeling, because my grandparents live right in Ohio, right across the Ohio River. So I'm big on all the sun worshippers and the mound builders and all the giant skeletons that were found in like the Adena mounds. Have you been to the West Virginia penitentiary, that giant haunted prison?
Oh yeah, yeah. I've investigated it there a couple times. I'm actually going back there in November for an overnight investigation.
Awesome.
But as far as the giants, I look into the ones that have been found right here in my area in Marion County. There's been, I think, a total of 7 supposedly found in Marion County, surrounding the Reesville and Fairmont Palatine area, and what they call the Macadam Road. There were supposedly earthen mounds back, 1700s and 1800s that were sadly plowed over and stuff like that. But there was a supposedly a road, by the literature in books that I have found it in. Talk about this Macadam Road was 9 feet wide, 14 inches thick, made of stone and crushed mussel shells, and it ran from the convergence of the Tiger and the West Fork River, and ran on the east bank of the Mon River to an area called Newport, which is now called Catawba, but it ran into that near with a creek called Little Creek. And so I started looking into the giants of Reesville, and all my research led me, to that area, to that same Little Creek area. If they were actually found at all. I mean, there's something that I found that may just completely, end that story completely. But yeah, suppose the skeletons were found along the mouth of the Paw Paw Creek, because I grew up just real close to there, and they were supposedly examined by a Dr. Zedekiah Kidwell out of Fairmont, and Nimrod Satterfield was the squire of the town at the time. Well, after they examined, he requested that they were reburied in what they call the Jolliffe Cemetery. Well, I went through tons and tons of old cemetery records trying to find the Jolliffe Cemetery in Reesville. I can't find a Jolliffe Cemetery, but directly, not quite directly, but across where the mounds are supposed to have been, what they call the Hope Mounds, just up from there, there's Prickett's Fort. It's a pretty well known fort, and I was actually checking around that area, and I was looking in the old cemetery, and I started finding the Jolliffe name. I found the stones with the Jolliffe name, so I thought maybe that's where they're at. Maybe this is part of it, because there's a creek that comes into the cemetery and whatnot. Well, led me to doing more research, and I found a Jolliffe Cemetery in a whole different county. Well, it's got the right time frame, but I think it's too far away. So that again led me to doing more research, and then I come across an old map, and I see this plot of land on there. It says J. Jolliffe. So I tracked down where this plot of land used to be. It actually is still in the Jolliffe family. There's an old man that lives on the property. His name, which is related. He's a descendant of Jolliffe, but his name is Starn. And I'm standing there talking to him, and I'm asking him, I said, "Hey man, do you know if there's a cemetery on your property with a Jolliffe name?" And he's like, "No." He said, "There's no cemetery." And I'm standing on his back porch, and I'm looking at this bank in front of me. He said, "But there is the Indian burial mound right here in my back porch." So I'm like, "What?" And he's like, "Yeah, man, this is an Indian burial mound." And he said, "I'll take you. We'll walk around it." And I walked around it, and it's a mound, and I've got aerial views of it, pictures of it. And I'm like, "That's awesome. This is crazy." And he said, "Yeah." He said, "When we were kids, we had a fence around it, and he said cattle were not even allowed on that mound. He said we considered a sacred mound. And as I'm leaving, thanking him for what talking to me and the information he's given me, and he's like, hey, by the way, he said, there's no cemetery on my property, but across the stream, this creek up on the hill, there's a cemetery. You might want to go look there. And I went up on the hill, and I was a little disappointed at first because it was all newer modern stones. And I was like, so I walk around anyway. Well, as I started walking to the back corner of this mound or this cemetery, it drops over the hill a little bit, and I could see this huge dead red, I don't know what type of tree it was, probably red oak or something, red rotten stub just standing there, and then beside it a big cedar pine. And I'm thinking, through research and knowing folklore and stuff, a lot of cemeteries were started, they were buried near bigger trees, and for some reason they planted cedar pines around these old cemeteries. So I started walking toward that, and I see first thing I see are two wooden planks sticking out of the ground, and then right beside it I see the name Jolliffe, then another one, then another one, and I'm just like, oh man, is this it? So I walk back to that stub where that stump is, and I'm looking, and directly across my sight is the mound. I'm like, well, that's pretty awesome. That led me to looking into some other stuff, like, hey, with the book I was reading, was the doctor an actual person? Was it just a made up name? So I looked in, I found him. I know where he's buried at, know his history and stuff. And I was going through all his history, and I got to one paragraph, and it talks about him being a member of the MP Church. And I'm thinking to myself, why does that sound familiar? I couldn't place it at first. And then it clicked. The old map. I got the map out, looked at the map, and looked on the map. Here's a little creek. Here's a cemetery. Here's the mound. Here's MP Church. All of it's right there in one spot. So if the Reesville Giants did exist, and they reburied them, I think they're in that cemetery. So
That's awesome.
That's amazing.
Yeah, that's one of the coolest giant stories I've ever heard. I love it. I just shook that can of soda up and sprayed it all in my face, man. Thank you. That was freaking awesome.
Do you think that somehow, like, the giants are possibly related to Sasquatch in any sort of way?
No.
You think it's something completely different?
Completely different. No, I don't
Why?
think they are. Because I just don't think they are. Because I don't know. If you listen to like the First Nations and Native American stories, there's really, other than the stories are called the red-haired giants, that there's just, I don't see much correlation between and what you think would the giant ape or whatever, and some of the stories of the giants you find supposedly found in mounds with the brass plates and all that stuff. I don't think they're related.
So based off of what you found, they're more of a civilized people, as far as the giants go.
Yeah, they were a race of people. There's proof of it out there. With the mound building and the artifacts that are found, the tools, and yeah.
That's really cool. Thank you for answering that for me.
Hey, did you find any sea creatures at Paw Paw's Creek? How's it pronounced? Ogua?
Ogua.
Ogua. Okay, yeah, Ogua. Could you tell everybody a little bit about Ogua?
That's in Reesville's like a weird place, man. Reesville has strange stories. They got the Ogua, then you get the Monoggy and the Hometown Monster and the Vegetable Man and the Giants and Bigfoot sightings. But yeah, the Ogua, it's a story started or that had come from Native American lore, that there was a giant turtle that lived in that river system that had two heads and a tail up to 15 feet long. But supposedly there were sightings, but the one thing that, whether it was or not, in the 1745, there was a family that moved into the Holt town. And supposedly that's one of the stories that has stuck around that this thing actually took their 14-year-old kid, I think it was, and took him into the water. But yeah, the ogua story stretches from like the Reedsville, Fairmont area all the way to Pittsburgh. You can actually hear stories of it all the way the entire 130-mile stretch of Mon River.
That's interesting.
It reminds me of Altamahaha, the sea serpent over in Georgia. And again, same type of waters. Your water's just flowing all the way to the bay. So I think they're all somewhat related, or maybe at least sharing the same waterways.
And then you also have to consider the water spirits. There's spirit, the water spirit. A lot of people aren't familiar with it, but they can lure people in, even other spirits, and kind of take you in. So that's something to think about as well.
100%. That's kind of like a siren, kind of like the, of course, Ohio River mermaids. That's more of a Indiana cryptid. But my mom and I, actually, I'm the one who had a visual encounter with two humps that were parallel with each other down Cat's Run Creek, going into the Ohio River. And it could have been giant catfish. I thought it was dolphin back in the day, but now I listen to reports of the green-clawed beast, the mantis man, these Ohio River mermaids, these muck dogs. Don't know what the heck it was. Could have been two Sasquatches for all I know.
Right.
Well, the ogua, as far as the ogua, I mean, it could have been a story started because some of the background with the lore and stuff is they believe the Native Americans started to keep white man away from that area because it was a hunting area. And plus the whole mound stuff, that was in that area. But anybody that lives in this area know that the river system we do have large turtles. We don't have alligator snappers, but we have large snapping turtles. Maybe back then, because they were not as, molested or whatever, or killed and ate or whatever, maybe they were bigger at that time. Because I even found an old newspaper article talking about a guy not far from Reedsville in I think it was early 1900s, kills a large turtle with a pickaxe, or it tries to kill it, hits it with a pickaxe, and it drags him into the water. Was it a big snapping turtle, or did he actually see the ogua? I mean, or what they call the ogua? But yeah.
My mom told me a story one time when she was little, and they grew up near the Elk River. There was a turtle so big they would like sit on it and ride it. Yeah. There's a lot of crazy stuff in the rivers. But like you said, Les, maybe like you said, it could have started like maybe they were trying to keep people off that land, and these stories start. But that got me to thinking that, even with paranormal experiences, when people talk about something, even if they don't have any proof of it, we can kind of manifest that to happen. Like how you hear about like movies, like when they film scary movies, like people start having heart attacks or bad stuff happens. Well, they're sitting there going over these lines and talking about it over and over and over, and then stuff happens. So I definitely believe that even if something is like just completely made up, that something could kind of come of it, because if people are, relaying this story and always talking about it, they can kind of make something happen.
Which, like creatures, that's called a tulpa. So, that's what it is. It's a thought manifested being or creature or something. A lot of people say that's when we talked about the Rake earlier. A lot of people believe that that's where the Rake come from, is from creepypasta. Then, since so many people have experienced that and thought about that, and that's why people experience it now, because our thoughts have manifested this thing. It's a thought form, or tulpa.
I'm going to have to look at creepypasta because I've never even heard of it. Like I've heard people say it, but I don't know what it is.
I think that creepypasta is a cover-up, though, because there are these cave creatures, so they cover it up saying, oh, the Rake, and then, it gets that rhetoric, like, yeah, it's just a creepypasta. But I think that one is a cover-up. But, Amber, creepypastas and SPCs, or SCPs, I forget what they're called, but lots of cool little internet shenanigans. That's awesome for scary lore and paranormal.
See, I'll probably read them and be like, oh my gosh, I've already seen something like that.
Oh yeah. While
Yeah,
we're on the topic of movies, real quick, I wrote down a list of scary movies that are based in West Virginia or just Appalachia. Of course, Wrong Turn. The first 6 got a little wonky. The first one was real wild, but the newest one actually talks about how these feral people live in the woods and are very orchestrated. And maybe I think that they are in cahoots or have treaties with the Sasquatch. So definitely rest in peace, Dennis Martin. Silent Hill, of course, takes place down in West Virginia, but I've been to the real Silent Hill, freaking Helltown in the Cuyahoga Valley National Park. Tucker and Dale vs. Evil, The Descent, a must-see movie. Timber Falls, Don't Let the Devil In. Castle Rock is a really cool Stephen King TV show that's actually filmed at the West Virginia penitentiary. And I've been there many times too. I'm a big Charles Manson fan, and his mom was kept there, and little Charlie grew up there, you know, crawling all over the lobby, and he actually requested to the warden to be transferred there, and it was denied. It was when hell freezes over. That's when that's what the warden responded. But it's really, really fun and really cool. Super 8, and that talks about an alien monster and why West Virginia out of all places. I think something's up with it. Of course, The Hunted. That's a really cool found footage film by one of my favorite actors, Josh Stewart. It's all these hunting cameras that are set up in his backyard, and a creature or some kind of entity starts taking over and uses the technology. I don't think, Sasquatch is a tech wizard, but definitely can infiltrate our electronics with, infrasound and maybe even something beyond that. X-Files, I Want to Believe, that was based in West Virginia. Mothman Prophecies, duh. And then Deliverance is based in Appalachian Trail. And then, of course, Blood Creek, a really bad horror movie that, but you watch it, it's just like Blair Witch. So you have to watch out. And I guess while we're on the topic of lists, I'll just read a couple. And if you guys have a response, or less, if you have a story or report of these, of course, the Sheep Squatch, as you talked about a little earlier, we won't get back into that. But how about the Devil Dog? We saw, mountain monsters go after it. But have you had any Devil Dog reports, or do those kind of fall into what you described earlier?
I mean, depends on what you want to call the Devil Dog. I mean, mostly what I understand the Devil Dog is basically a spiritual thing that, that it is something that comes from hell to take the souls away. That's what I've always heard. But no, I've never experienced anything like that, or I don't, as far as, and nobody's ever really told me, other than Amber talking about it a little bit ago, but no, I've never experienced anything like that.
All right. What about the Wampus Cat?
No, I mean, I've never had anybody tell me anything about it either. I've researched it, but never had anybody tell me. I mean, I've had plenty of people tell me they've seen mountain lions, but nothing like that. Yeah,
I saw you had a big cat hunt on your channel too. So definitely, there's panther and bobcat, lynx, and other, four-legged creatures. Probably some actual tigers that have gone loose, off of the circus trains long ago. I know down by Matt, there was actual stories of real lions and tigers and real monkeys that got loose. It's really crazy. Oh
yeah, man. They were back in 1992. There was Hurricane Andrew, and when that happened, a lot of zoos and wildlife sanctuaries were damaged, and a lot of animals were released. And we have a long-time Everglades researcher named Dave Sheely down here, and when I met him, he was telling me all kinds of stories about seeing tigers and hyenas, like actual hyenas, all kinds of crazy exotic animals that he bumps into out there because, people who are a part of the illegal animal trade or, let's just stop at I guess that tangent at that point. But they release them out into the wild, and we have a lot of issues with these invasive and just regular animals down here in South Florida. everybody, they buy all these pets, whether it's fish, snakes, birds, whatever, and they like them, they love them, they get bored, they get big, and they get dangerous, and they're like, you know what? Let's just put it out in the Everglades. So,
I mean, I'm in West Virginia. We've had gators here because people buy them and just kind of toss them out in the river.
Yeah. There was one. Oh, it was probably going on 10 years now, but it was a black caiman in the Mon River. It was 5 foot long that they caught.
Wow.
Yeah.
Hopefully they shipped it down to Florida so it can thrive and flourish.
No, I think they actually killed it, or it was already, or it died naturally. I don't remember which, but they did get it out of the river.
I'm surprised it survived up there.
Oh yeah, I mean, I don't know how long it's been there. I don't know, maybe it's something that somebody released, like Amber said. Maybe that's the case. As far as big cats and stuff here, I've never heard anything as far as tigers and lions and stuff like that. I hear the Black Panther stories, but none of them have ever panned out. The pictures I've seen, people are like, hey, here's a Black Panther. They took a, if you kind of scale with certain things in the photograph, you can tell it's a house cat. But I have talked to many people that says, yeah, there are mountain lions here. I've never seen them. I've seen bobcats. I've tracked bobcats, but I've never seen a mountain lion. But yeah, I just, for case in point, I talked to a guy that has is he actually retired now? He doesn't have any longer, but he had a game checking station, which it was where he sold ammo and everything, guns, a pawn shop, game, all of it into one big building there. And I would go and buy my shells and stuff there and fishing license, and then he knows what I'm into. He knows I'm into Bigfoot stuff, looking for that, and he's always like, "Hey man, did you find anything? Anybody tell you?" Like, no, I ain't found nothing. And so I looked at him one day. I said, "Hey," I said, "I know you got people that come in here, all the time, checking in game. Hunters are in here, whatever. Has anybody ever told you they seen a big cat, any mountain lions?" And he looks at me, and we're standing at the end of the counter. We're by the register, and his other counter goes down with all his pistols and stuff in it. And he just looks at me, and he goes like this. He says, shakes his head. So he has me go to the other end of the counter. He said, man, he said, a couple years ago, he said, I had a regular come in. He said, he always in here, calls me by my name, one of those type. And he said, he looks at me, he goes, hey, he said, I killed a mountain lion. And he said, I looked at him and he said, you're full of it, man. He said, you ain't got no mountain lion. There ain't no mountain lion in West Virginia. They're extinct. DNR says they're extinct. They're not here. He said, I'm telling you, man, I killed a mountain lion. And he said, you come to my house and I'll show you. He lived on between somewhere around the Marion and Wetzel County line. He said, so I went to his house. He said, I was going to, call his bluff. I went to his house. He said, he walked in his garage. He has a big deep freeze in there. We kept all his meat from hunting. And he said, it was that deep freeze. He said, I'll be damned. There's a mountain lion laying in his deep freeze. He said, I looked at it, and he said, I was just shocked. He said, a few months later, he said he's in I can't remember the county right offhand, but down southern part of the state. He said, I'm down there fishing, and he said, I'm with my brother-in-law, which happens to be a DNR officer. He said, we're sitting along the creek or lake or whichever one it was, he told me. And he said, hey, I need to tell you something. He said, I had a customer come in and said he killed a mountain lion. And he did not expect his brother-in-law to say, yeah, I don't doubt it. And he said, looks at him, he said, no, man. He said, I'm telling you, I was holding it in my hands. I picked it up, its head up, was looking at it. And he said, yeah, and probably so. He said, they say, looks at him, he says, man, he said, you guys tell us that they're not here. They're extinct. We don't have mountain lions. And he said, and this has been told to me by two other DNR officers. He said, what we're to tell you is the eastern mountain lion is no longer in West Virginia. They're extinct, the eastern mountain lion. He said, the only way you could know if it's a native eastern mountain lion is it would have to have a DNA test done. He said if it's one that has escaped from any kind of zoo or like something like that, or wildlife areas, it would be inoculated. There, you could tell from a blood test. Then he goes and he looks at him. He says, "But if it's one of them that we have released, it has a tattooed number in its upper lip." So his brother-in-law basically admitted that DNR has released mountain lions in West Virginia. Whether he's telling the true story or not, I don't know. But or his brother-in-law was telling the true story or not, or just pulling his leg. But he said he never changed his story.
So I saw 2 of the black cats, and it's probably been 20 years ago, but on the property where I live now, we were ripping up floors and, just moved in and went out on the back porch to smoke a cigarette, and it looks up right by the creepy woods, and we hear rare, and these 2 black cats, and I had a pit at the time, and they were bigger than him. I mean, huge black tails, but they were chasing each other, and there was this kind of skinny tree, but it had a couple branches, and one jumped in the tree and the other one jumped up after it. We took off. My arm was bruised because my mom was there, and she went in the house first, and I'm trying to get in and bang my arm on the door, but we saw them, and I called the DNR at that time, and she said, it was a lady I spoke to, and she said, "We've had several reports from your area, but all I can tell you to do is take your pets and your kids inside. You're not allowed to shoot it."
Yeah.
Now today, well, not today, last year, a neighbor of mine, just right down the road, on their security footage, they got a video of it, and you can tell it's way bigger than a house cat, and it's not the bobcat. You can tell it's bigger. When she called, it was a man who answered the phone, and he said, "We don't have those in West Virginia. That's not what you're seeing." But she has video of it. I can send you that video too, Les. It's cool.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, a buddy of mine seen one down in the outside of Beckley and Oak Hill area, and he was telling me about it. And he said when he called the DNR officer, and they said, "No, they're not here," and he said they changed their story when he told them that it had an orange collar on, a tracking collar. And he said the officer immediately was like, "Where'd you see it at?" And, yeah. So.
Yeah, black cats are everywhere in America. Yeah. I've been on that train for a while now. But Les, what about the Flatwoods Monster? Do you hang out at that museum ever?
Yeah, Andrew's a good friend of mine. I've done some research into Gray Barker files to get him, and I've took stuff there to him that's come from them files. I like the story. I mean, it's a really cool story. That story I think there's some credence too because of because Fred, Freddie's still alive. Ed and Freddie both are still alive. They'll don't interview much, but they'll tell you, yeah, we've seen it. But as far as the counterpart of it, the Frametown monster, that's supposed to be, yeah. Where'd you get that at?
I actually bought it from Woodin, West Virginia. He's a young fella. You friends with him?
Yeah, he's my buddy.
Oh, everybody support Woodin, West Virginia. He is a really hard-working young man. Does freaking incredible work, man. Look at the grafted monster right there. I love that.
I have that one as well. Yeah, Gabe's my buddy.
Salute to Gabe.
Yeah. Hey, Gabe. But yeah, as far as the Frametown monster, which is like supposedly happened like 24 hours later, I don't think that actually happened. I think it was a completely fabricated story because if you look into the story, none of the geographical parts of it match up anything. And plus, it didn't come out until like 5 years later, and it come out in a magazine, I don't think so. But as far as what the other Bashful Billy, you ever heard of that?
I don't think so. No, that sounds awesome.
Well, you got to look into Bashful Billy if you're up next to Wheeling.
Yeah.
So supposedly it was like because the grafted or the Flatwoods Monster happened on the 12th. Bashful Billy was like 15th or the 16th in Wheeling. Whether that whether it's a real story or whether it was sensationalized by a newspaper because of what happened in Braxton County. But there are stories. There was a story talking about this creature that, you know, same thing, green, red, nauseous fumes, and you know, supposedly there was a woman that was burnt by this thing. But the thing is, if you look up Bashful Billy, the picture that's whoever put together the artwork from back then for this is so ridiculously cheesy. It's like a dragon head thingy with a long neck and has like little jeans on and shorts or something. But yeah, that happened. And then if you look into some newspaper articles, within a day or two, also across the river in Ohio, there was 2 sightings on different farms of a creature similar.
Wow. That is so awesome how it all comes together. And we're actually going to be researching a hooded creature as well down here in the Panhandle. And I compare it to the Flatwoods Monster all the time, but it was a hooded Sasquatch that was stalking a woman. So we're bringing our Flatwoods Monster angle for this one 100% down here in the swamp. So it's really cool when, you know, the Appalachia just keeps going down, man.
Well, do you know who Frank Frascino is?
I heard you mention him earlier. I definitely have to do some research.
He's an author that's wrote a book and it's wrote a couple books on the Flatwoods Monster stuff. But supposedly he has unearthed a story in Florida that had basically the same premise to it, with a group of Boy Scouts and seeing a creature in Florida. I think I found it online one time, but I think it's in one of his books.
Wow, we're going to have to follow up on that because no matter where in Florida, we have friends, we have teammates, we have eyes. So a bazillion % we are interested.
Yeah,
have you heard any snallygaster or, lizard demons, fire dragons? You guys remember that footage of that rhinoceros type creature that was up against a tree and then went downward? And man, that thing's a beast. You guys heard about those in West Virginia?
Oh yeah, the snallygaster.
Oh yeah. I actually
cool.
am friends with the Snallygaster Museum owner in Maryland.
Sarah.
Yes. Yep. Yeah. Sarah. I actually I unfollowed her once she had mandates, but got to stick to my heart.
Yeah, I
still love her. I still love her.
Yeah, this is a little book I wrote, and we talk about the snallygaster. And there's I found a newspaper article talking. Let me read it here. I'm an old man, guys. You got to hold on.
Oh, no worries.
We're young guys, so we got to rock.
We're still, yeah.
It was from the Pendleton Times newspaper in March of 1935. Stated that the snallygaster was terrorizing the family of Kenny Bland on March 1st, 1935. He is said to have chased him or left him high in the air was left high in the air by the monster. It is presumed that Bland was talking about being treed by the beast. So, and there's other stories, and I guess that supposedly there were sightings from 1935 to 1941 in Pendleton County.
Has there been any recent?
Not that I know of. I mean, that's another whole story that, if you look into that story, I mean, snallygaster comes from the German, German words, and yeah, thank you. I may not look old, but I'm real close to 50. But yeah, if you look into it, that's some of those stories were actually may have been started to keep. This is bad to say, but to keep slaves in line from running off from the areas. Then in the early 1900s and stuff, with Prohibition and stuff, some people believe the stories were reintroduced by moonshiners to keep people away from their steels, people out of certain areas. But anyway, it was that legend is so believed in parts that even people, really devout Christians, thought, hey, let's paint these 7-pointed stars on our barns, on our porches, because the 7-pointed star is considered a sacred star for the 7 days of creation, and that it was supposedly it was to keep the snallygaster away. So
I think that's so cool how Sarah did a little tour of that, going to all the barns that had it painted on it. Where can people get your book, and how'd you publish it? What could tell us more about it? That's freaking awesome.
It's just a little tiny book. It's just a little booklet of some Mark Randall. I don't know if you guys know who Mark Randall. He does a lot of work on some of the work in Small Town Monsters movies. You know, some of the recreations and stuff like that. He's out of Indiana. He's a friend of mine. Contacted me and said, "Hey, I would like to do a project with you." And he did the artwork. Like there's the Wampus cat.
Yes.
That's awesome.
You know, there's the white thing.
Cool.
Dope.
But he does all this artwork. And he said, "I would like to do Vegetable Man."
That's cool.
Did you say Vegetable Man?
Yeah, Vegetable Man.
Oh, yeah. When you're done with your story, tell me about that one.
Okay. He contacted me and said, "I'd like to do a project with you." And I'm like, "Okay, what would you like to do?" And he said, "I would like to, get some West Virginia cryptids, and I want you to write about those cryptids." And like, man, I said, I'm not a writer. I don't even know how. He said, I'll do the artwork. You do the research. And I did all the research, and I put it together. And the hardest part was to keep all the information I found within 250, 300 words. So I got a little bit of historical parts there, this and that, and put it all together. And it turned out pretty well. And God bless Grammarly, because I have no idea how to use any kind of punctuation. But it turned out well. It's sold at the Flatwoods Monster Museum. It's sold at the Mothman Museum. It's sold at the Bigfoot Museum. You can get it on Amazon. If you just look up my name, you'll find it on Amazon. But yeah, it turned out really well. There's been quite. I mean, I'm not saying I sold millions of copies, but I was surprised at how many I have sold. I mean, 200 or 300 copies so far. It was a fun project.
Awesome. I'm definitely gonna look into getting me a copy.
Awesome.
And as far that right there is one of his art. That one, this one. Yeah, I got a bunch of them. Some of them, other ones are other people. But yeah, the Vegetable Man was from. Oh shoot, it's another one, Reesville. I want to make sure I get the year right. I think it was 1968. Let me make sure.
They're like, what do we call it? We'll just call him the Vegetable Man. That's awesome.
That's what it's called. Yeah, they call it the Vegetable Man.
It's kind of cool because they call the Skunk Ape the Cabbage Man. So you go next into the food kingdom, it's the Vegetable Man. So I think I'm going to let that leak out when I'm talking about the Skunk Ape as well, because last time I checked, cabbage was a vegetable.
Yeah, it was
Tomato is a fruit.
It was 1968. Jennings Frederick was his guy's name. He was out woodchuck hunting, a woodchuck or groundhog, whatever you want to call it. And it got to the point, it got late in the day, he hadn't found or got anything. He decided to head home. He's heading toward the family farm. And he got to an area where he wanted to take a small break, get a drink of water. That's when from somewhere around him, he heard this high-pitched chattering noise that sounded like a record player playing super fast. And he looking around and trying to figure out what's coming from. He's sweating, so he goes to grab his handkerchief out of his back pocket, and he feels a sharp pain in his arm. When he turns around, he's staring eye to eye with this thing, 7 foot tall, green, stocky looking creature that looks like a plant-based creature with yellow eyes. And this thing tells him, I got it written down, or in here, I'll tell you exactly what it says. I quoted him. You need not to fear me. I wish to communicate. I come as friends. We know all of you. I come in peace. I wish medical assistance. I need your help. This thing's telling him. And when he looks at his arm and feels the pain, he notices that this thing has long fingers with suction cups on his fingers, but also has like hypodermic needle looking things sticking out of its fingers. And one of them is in his arm, and he's noticing that it's like sucking the blood out of his arm through his finger. He said, and the guy, he describes it going on for about a minute. But, well, he starts to freak out, and then he says that this thing's eyes, orange circles start to swirl around in its eyes, and he's like hypnotized basically, and he doesn't feel the pain anymore. And with about a minute later, the thing lets him go, and bounds off in 25-foot strides up over the hill and disappears, and is never seen again. So that's where the story Vegetable Man came from.
It almost sounds like an Ent from the Lord of the Rings or something like that, you know, like the tree people.
Yeah.
That's really wild. That's a cool story.
I was kind of thinking some type of extraterrestrial possibly too, like that. That's what kind of that put me in mind of.
Most people think that's what it was, because Gray Barker actually investigated the story, and he talked to other folks in the area. And there was one story, and it was a lady was standing at her window in her kitchen doing dishes and looking out the window, and she sees this craft, and it was within the same time frame, land in the field outside away from her home, and this thing comes down out of the craft and walks out in the field, and then turns around, goes back in, and the craft lifts back up and takes off. So.
That's awesome.
Wild.
Any stories of cattle mutilations or crop circles? You know, something connected, kind of that alley.
No, not that I've never heard any. I mean, there may have been something, but I've never come across it.
So let me ask you this question. So you make this book about, you know, all these different folklores, and you get all these, you know, reports and encounters and things like that. How many have you actually found evidence of?
I mean, I have found what I think may be tracks from Bigfoot a handful of times.
Handful. That is super cool, man. A handprint is super rare, as you know, in the community, man. So props to you and your son.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, other than that, I mean, most of them are just stories. I mean, unless you look at some of the other evidence, or not physical evidence that you can talk to, like when I talked to, like my son and I went and investigated a sighting in Nicholas County, and there was two things that stuck out to me that let me just explain. I keep these 4x4 pictures of faces from Bigfoot that have been CGI made that I found on the internet that are based on witness sightings. I keep those when I investigate a sighting to have people look at them if they've seen the face, to pick out either the face that looks like it or different features from different faces, to give me a physical, or to give me an idea in my mind what these look like instead of them just telling me. Not only do I do that with those, but I also use them as what I call a tell, a sign to see if I'm being BS'd or not. Because if I lay these out and have them pick them out, and I got somebody that winces back and shows some kinds of physical emotion, I'm going to listen to them a little deeper, because I think they're telling me the truth. Mm-hmm. If I say these pictures out and the individual goes, "Oh yeah, it looked just like Cal, man," and just nonchalant, I'm thinking, okay, you're BSing me. So on that case particular, I did that with the there was two individuals in a car, an old man and an old lady. They seen this thing. I asked her, I said, "Do you mind sketching what you saw?" She said yes. And I took him aside, and I interviewed him separately. I took him aside and I said, "Do you mind picking out a picture of a face?" Because they told me they seen the face of possibly, match to what you saw. He picks out a face. I take that picture, look at the drawing. They're almost an identical match, as far as I can, I'm here. The other thing is they kept, even she drew this. So they kept telling me, "We don't remember seeing the feet." And I'm like, okay. And she drew the picture with just below the knees, gone. So they started telling me where they were at, what the distance they were driving, or when they first saw it, and I was like, okay. And then there's a big gravel lot, and I was like, you put me, or you take my son in this gravel lot, relation to the edge of the road, you put him where this thing was. I'll get in my car. You stop me where you believe you were. Guy stops me, and I immediately took a picture from the inside the car. And I went over and I'm talking to him. I was like, "Is you sure that's where it was at?" He said, "Yeah." I said, "I want you to look at a picture, and I want you to tell me what you see in that picture that you notice that stands out to you." And he looks at it, and you can see him, catch exactly what I'm talking about. He says, "You can't see the feet." And that stuck with me, because why would somebody make up that part of a story that they can't see the feet? And if you look at the pictures I took, my son is only 10 to 15 feet from the front of their car, or my car, and you can't see much below his knees. So that, to me, that gives them their story credibility. I like finding stuff like that.
Very cool.
See, you are a researcher, I'm telling you.
Yes, you are. Because you think about it out of the box, you try to think about logical explanation to it, while having the understanding that, we're trying to apply science to the unexplained. So that's really cool, man.
Thank you.
You're doing great work, Les. Definitely keep it up. Keep at it.
Thank you.
This has been awesome getting together.
Is the hair that's in the museum found by you, Les? What researcher did find that?
That's my buddy Daniel. I don't know exactly where he found it at. He got it from either found it or it came from somebody, some case that he was looking into. I can't remember which.
Cool. Matt and Nana Boss were down in Mayaca, and I was with them. They actually found an orange-colored hair on this Native American relic setup of a picnic table. And if you put it under a microscope, which they did, you can see it's clear, a little bit of gray, a little bit of green, and it matches up with some of the other hair that we found in the green swamp. So I'd like to see what that hair from the West Virginia looks like under a microscope. And I'm sure it looks like the stuff that's in Tennessee and out west as well, and probably down under in Australia with the Yowies, and then up in the Yarra. Man, it's amazing. I think they are angelic. What do you think maybe these creatures are? Are they Nephilim descendants? Are they descendants of Cain? Are they Gigantopithecus, aliens, all of above? I thought it was interesting how you said the giants are different than the Sasquatch. Yeah. I love that.
I'll be honest with you. I have no idea. No clue. And
thank you for your honesty.
For me to actually come out and say, yeah, I know exactly what the hell they are, is just, to me, it's just showing conceit, man, because nobody really knows. I mean, we have circumstantial evidence. Yeah, that a lot has been disproven. We have footprints that, hey, it could be. Even the tracks that I found, I'll tell people it's up to your interpretation to see, what you see. My tracks that I found do not look like your typical Bigfoot track, because the areas that I'm in, you're just not going to find that typical Bigfoot track, because the substrate is just not conducive for that kind of track. You're looking at leaf litter, you're looking at pine forest. So what I do, when I find one that I feel that has some of the features that should be there, I do rubbing. I lay paper over it. I take a piece of crayon, or I take something and rub it and make a rubbing of it to see if it translates to the paper, and then I frame those. So.
You know what you could also do with that? Get a 3D scanner. I don't know what kind of phone you have, but get a 3D scanner app. That's one of the things that I like to use down here, because, up in Connor's area, he's got a little bit better substrate than I do. Down here, we're looking at like sawgrass or mud. And, a lot of the times, like, prints are very weird. And So my thought process was to save myself a little bit of back pain, and from having to carry around a bunch of hydrocal, and to deal with the lack of good substrate, use a 3D scanner. And so far I've got some really nice 3D prints. And then if you want the physical cast, you can take it to anybody that has a CNC machine, upload the file in, and they can print it out there right there for you.
Well,
I didn't
one
even
of
know
my
you could
casts,
do that.
one of my casts has been 3D printed, and it's at
Oh,
the
cool.
museum. But in my opinion, it doesn't show the features as well as the rubbing does. It just you can see it looks exactly like my plaster cast, but when you do the rubbing, if you rub it, it shows the toes, it shows the area, the highest raised area. So
What kind of paper do you use? Just lined
that's my
paper?
next question.
no, just regular
Computer
white paper, computer
Very-
paper.
Okay, cool.
Matt, we got it going. I know Cliff Brackman is big on the rubbings, but I never actually took it that serious. But man, you'll see it down here out of the Florida swamp. Les, I just want to show you these pictures real quick. This is from one of my friends in West Virginia, and it's 4 perfect face shots of a creature. She has multiple other of this creature. They get onto her roof, and they've been stalking her. She actually just started a channel called Turquoise and Sasquatch. She definitely has some special powers, and she is a magnetic pull for these creatures. But that definitely looks a little bit more man-like than the Mayaka skunk ape photos with the snout and sharp teeth, and definitely looks a little different than the female Patty as well.
Yeah.
But man, it really just shows that these things come in all shapes and sizes, just like Chihuahuas and Great Danes. They're all dogs.
You need to introduce me to her, Connor. You said she's around here.
I know. I was just thinking that when I was pulling it up. I was like, how do they not?
Zoom in on one of those pictures, and I'll try to pull you up bigger. I've never done this before, but I'm going to try.
Yeah.
Oh, wait. I didn't do it right. Hold on. I don't know what I did. Wait, how do you do it? Can somebody walk me through this real quick?
Well, I don't have the options. If I had the options, I could look at. I'm so sorry.
Just the solo layout? Is that what you do?
Hey, Connor, do this. Send it to her through Messenger, and then Amber. Then there you go. That'll work too.
I don't know how to do it.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
try it now.
Connor Flynn, buy my books. Follow me on TikTok. No, I'm gonna hold it up. It'll be good.
I
That
can
is
see him.
awesome.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
It's awesome. Everybody, guys, you guys now have seen a clear picture of Sasquatch, but I upload them every day on my TikTok. New evidence every day at 5 Central, 6 Eastern. It's all about, spreading awareness and raising the IQ of this cryptid community. And I love that we can speak open with ufology, paranormal, and cryptids. In our corner, there is none, none of these wall buildings and barriers. And that's the only way we can learn. We don't take stuff out of reports. We have to, take it all in, baby.
Yeah, I was on, when I was kind of scanning through people's lives on TikTok the other day, I came across the paranormal group and I follow them. I mean, they're good, but they also were talking about Bigfoot. And they were like, we don't think it's real. These pictures are fake. And I'm like, you're trying to convince people to believe your evidence when your meter goes off, to believe in ghosts and demons and all of this stuff. But you're going to tell people, and then they have a decent sized following. I'm like, why are you telling these people that all of this research is not true? Like, that's not, if you don't believe it, that's fine. But trying to convince other people and convince them to think the way you think just because you're being closed minded, I don't think that's cool at all. I mean, we're all in this together, whether it's you're looking for Sasquatch or UFOs. I mean, there's still the paranormal aspect to all of it.
That's the one thing that I try to convince. The one thing that I truly try to push is that we can't discount anybody's accounts. Nobody. Right. There's no such thing as not credible. There's no such thing as what's the right way to word this? It's not science enough, we can't. It's all unexplained stuff that people if you sure, yeah, if somebody comes to me with a Sasquatch encounter that they had yesterday, I can still say, well, that's a good possibility, because guess what? People have been having Sasquatch encounters for thousands of years now, and it's been in recorded history all across the world, right? So the same thing with the paranormal, the same thing with extraterrestrials. I mean, there's cave paintings, there's hieroglyphs in Egypt.
Exactly.
It's all over the world. So for one person who's interested in one of those subjects to sit there and say, oh no, all the other stuff isn't real, but what I'm talking about, what I like is that's just not right, man. That's just not right. And that's just my opinion, that's not for me. We're supposed to be coming together, and really the only way. I like to talk about the Bible, right? The Bible talks about how the Tower of Babel fell, and then suddenly everybody couldn't understand each other anymore, right? Nobody could understand what all these other people that they were just around their whole lives. They can't understand a word that they're saying anymore. Well, all of them left with a certain piece of the puzzle, and they all went to their corners of the map. And then we've been repopulating in those areas for the last last couple thousand years. I think every single religion has a piece to the puzzle that puts you closer to God. And it's the same thing with these cryptids. It's the same thing with all of these wild stories that we all hear and have been hearing for thousands of years. Everybody somewhere else just has a different piece of the puzzle. And the only way to put the puzzle together is if we have all the pieces and everybody comes together and brings their piece to the table. So
that's how I feel too. You can't in investigating all this stuff, whether it's just the subject of Bigfoot alone, if you don't look into all of it, you can't separate the differences, and you can't put together the similarities to see if maybe this part of something is something maybe completely different. Maybe we can pull that aside. Maybe it's only one encounter, maybe just one encounter, but 10 years down the road, you got a second. 5 years down the road, you got a third. You start putting in that pile and look, hey, these three things are the same. They're different than Bigfoot, but they're three things the same. So that thing, that's how I feel that some of the stuff that I run into, and I keep that, is because it helps me. I don't look at the woo like some people. Oh, I don't want to listen to none of that stuff, because that helps. If you don't do that and you don't take in everything, how are you going to know what you're actually looking into without being able to separate it, or without being able to put stuff together and look at the science of it instead of just using your opinions? You know what I mean?
Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, we shouldn't be going off of opinion. All right, for example, I could sit here and say, I don't believe the snallygaster exists at all. That's some wild made up thing. But you know what? The dude who you wrote about who had that encounter would probably punch me in the face for saying that. Mm-hmm. It put him up a tree, according to him. You know what I mean? Like, just because I think one way or anybody else thinks one way doesn't give somebody the right to push their opinion that other person is wrong.
Exactly. It's like, since when are we gaslighting other people's experiences and feelings? Like, that's not cool. No matter which aspect you're on. If you just like ghosts and don't want nothing to do with Bigfoot, that's fine. But for anybody to like just, talk bad about it or try to discredit somebody's experiences or their feelings or anything they went through. Because sometimes when people have these experiences, it's really traumatic for them. Not everybody wants to run out and look into it like we do. So it's kind of like, it's hurtful in a way too. So we definitely have to, I think that's, like Matt said, the whole goal, we're trying to like bring everybody together and kind of get on the same page here.
Yeah, that's the feeling I have with the theory, and a lot of people strongly believe that Bigfoot live in caves and no mines. I can see that Bigfoot can shelter in certain places like that, but to live deep underground, they would have to possess characteristics, attributes that, or other skill sets that, we wouldn't, some people don't think they have or could have, like it's just like tool use. If you're ever in like the cave I was in this weekend, once you're back in 100 feet, you're in TD. You're in total darkness, man. You're in complete darkness. I can't see a thing. If a Bigfoot can see something in that darkness, that means they have some kind of special ability with their eyes. They can see, or they can use tools. They know fire. Because they have to see somehow, that's where I find it hard for me to say, yeah, they live in caves. That, and my research or looking into it, my understanding is once you're inside total darkness, like for so many days, if you don't acclimate to light, if you come straight out of light, it basically burns up your retinas.
I saw somebody in the comments earlier say they think that maybe they use the caves for like a travel system or something, or I don't know, like traveling. Then again, if they do, they have to have some special skill set or some kind of characteristic that enables them to do that. If they have the same sight we do, okay, just say they do. You're not going to travel through that cave, very well, unless you know that cave somehow. It's just not going to happen. I mean, I understand that, they're blind people have, can have heightened senses and stuff like that. But if I find it hard, especially for a large creature, to get into, because the cave system I was in, it's pretty, there's several different passages. It's long. There's 5 different entrances, but a lot of it is very narrow. Once you get out of the chamber, it's very narrow. You're not going to get a 7, 8 foot tall creature that weighs 800 pounds, 900 pounds through any of that. I'm 5'9" and I'm 340 pounds, and there ain't no way I was getting through any of it. So there again, what's that movie? I don't know the name of it, but there's like the people that live like underground and they're like, their skin's all like white and their eyes are all weird. It's a creepy movie. I can't remember the name of it.
The Descent?
Maybe.
Say, isn't that The Descent? Yeah, I think it's The Descent. That thing was
I don't know what I ate for dinner yesterday, so I can't remember any names of stuff. But
the Cherokee have folklore of the Moon-Eyed people. The Moon, it was basically a white race of people, a race of skin white, stark white people with large blue eyes that lived underground, only come out at night. So
lunatics.
Yeah.
There's definitely a lot to it.
I'm big on maybe these creatures have echolocating, kind of like bats and dolphins as well. But yes, I can't argue with that. If a creature's 8 foot tall, I don't know if it would actually be able to physically be able to maneuver. Of course, they can crawl like spiders forwards and backwards, and energy comes in particle form and wave form. So maybe in their true moments of being, they can become wave form. But I don't think just to get past a rock. I'm thinking more like maybe entering a new realm. But that, of course, has to be high level training. Same thing with tools and fire. I think definitely some Sasquatch tribes, of course, utilize that, but others probably are terrified of fire. But again, I think their eyes are a little bit different than ours, so they could probably see in total darkness, but you weren't lying with, them having to adapt to actual sunlight. It all connects. I'm huge on there is earth beneath our feet. Lord of the Rings, City of Ember, pretty much every story we've ever heard, Jungle Cruise, King Kong, even the new Ice Age is all about Middle Earth. So they've been hitting us with these signs.
They've also been finding cities underground too, like way under. So that's actually been happening recently. See, in my opinion, I think Bigfoot, Sasquatch is in and out of our realm. I think that they can kind of come and go, which is why they can vanish if they want to, and they choose to show themselves to people that they are comfortable with, or maybe if somebody gets too close and they want to scare them. But I don't think that it's going to be like this, just like a grizzly bear. You're just going to go out and just grab it. I don't think that's ever going to happen, especially if you have that intention. But if somebody doesn't think the way I think, I'm definitely not going to be like, oh my God, you're wrong. You know what I mean? But I definitely think that there's that same energy that keeps you alive, me alive, Connor alive, Matt alive, everybody, that energy in us is in the trees. It's in them. It's in everything. So there's definitely that energy field to it,
See, that's where I'm talking about. You have to separate. You have to
Right.
separate, because if you look at that stuff and put it in one file, and then you look at the other stuff, like the physical evidence you find in, footprints and forest stuff, or things in the forest, or like the nests in the Pacific Northwest, that's a physical animal doing that. That is something completely different, I feel, than anything that goes from realm to realm. That is an animal. And whether they live instinctually only, no, I don't believe so. They have an intelligence to them. But why would an interdimensional being use, make nests like that, use certain use that, the huckleberry, which they think they use them as, for it's used as a medicine by the Native Americans for childbirth. And these Sasquatch in the Pacific Northwest will use that, believe they'll use that for possibly that same thing. I don't think an interdimensional being is going to do that. I mean, even though it's even though it's an interdimensional being, some people are like, oh no, it's, you hear the flesh and blood and
Right.
and argument. Even if it is interdimensional, comes from another dimension, comes here and leaves evidence, that's still a flesh and blood animal. Whether it's the same as what maybe living in the forest of the Pacific Northwest or Ohio or Pennsylvania, wherever, I don't know. That's another reason why I say, when you research this and look into it, you have to look into all of it and be able to, you may have your own opinions on certain things, and you may have your own belief on certain things, and you might want to go down that avenue, but maybe that's the avenue you're researching, or the prospect you're researching. But don't dismiss what the other part of it is, because
Right.
it may be completely different things, and until we can take that and separate it and know for sure they're completely two different things, you just can't dismiss it at all.
Right. I mean, there could be a time, thousands of years ago, that they just kind of hung out just like the deer and the rabbits, and then, destructive humans, scare them off, and maybe that's why they're in the, you know what I mean? They hide out because people destroy everything. I mean, not all people, but just people in general just destroy everything and everybody's habitat. So, I mean, maybe they were pushed back, and they weren't always like that. You know what I'm saying? Like, maybe they were. I mean, there's a lot that we don't know, but that's just a theory, I guess.
I mean, yeah, other things like Salt Fork and like West Virginia, there are sightings that's taken place in all this. Then you had to think about, well, in the late 1800s, early 1900s, when basically most of the timber in West Virginia, and like Salt Fork was basically barren 50 to 60 years ago. Where were they at then? How are they there now? And where'd they come from? Where do they go? Same way here. It wasn't completely stripped, but there is very little old growth forest left in West Virginia. Very little. If it had, that's where, you can say the caves, but most of the caves in West Virginia are not huge. I mean, there are some bigger caverns and stuff, and I think there's been, when I looked it up before, there's like maybe close to 5,000 different caves that have been found in West Virginia. Majority of those are no deeper than like 30 feet, and they don't go anywhere. They're just a cave. So, and a lot of those probably aren't very tall. So yeah, they can. That's where I think they could take shelter, but I don't think they could live long term if they're your average physical being like we may be, or even like your primate gorilla, or gorilla, like a gorilla or something like that. They would, for them to do that, they would have to have some kind of special abilities, something.
I think they definitely have an amazingly high vibration, for sure. Like there's so much to it that we'll probably never know, maybe not till we get to the other side, but they're definitely, I think, a lot more intelligent than we probably will ever understand or even give them credit for. they know what's going on. They know how to read people and how to feel their surroundings and when to stay away and when to show up, for sure.
That's because they're not. That doesn't mean they're special. That's because they're the master of their domain. When we're in their domain, we're just peons, basically.
Well, the stance that I like to take is that, nobody really knows anything about this. So who's to say that they can't be both physical and flesh and blood and special? You know what I mean? We have people all over the world who are special, who are able to feel and see and hear things on higher frequencies than the average human being. Who's to say that, these things can't do the same thing and still be a physical form? Look at Amber, look at myself. We're people who are able to tap into those abilities, and we're sitting here flesh and blood. Who's to say that they can't be like that too? Jesus could heal people. If we're going to talk about the Bible, Jesus could heal people. He could turn water to wine. He could do all these miraculous things. We can't sit here and say that just because something's unexplained, it has to be one or the other. And I think that's a misconception that a lot of people think, and stance that they take, is that it has to be one way or another, or they can't understand it. Well, how about we just look at the picture from both sides? And so, and we realize that is the whole picture. That, everything has a duality. Everything is physical and spiritual and metaphysical all at the same time. That, we don't have any sort of scientific evidence to prove that a person has a spirit, but we all feel like we have one.
And getting out there and experiencing it and being hands-on with it, or, trying your best to put yourself in the middle of it to experience, to have those experiences and talk to people who have had different experiences, adds to it. You have to kind of see the whole picture.
100%. And these kind of conversations bring us a little bit closer to what we're looking for and who we are. Because I think these cryptid creatures are our bridge to the creator. If Sasquatch is real, then imagine what else is. And snallygasters, vegetable man, skunk ape creatures, trolls, trees that can move. I believe there's a little bit of reality in every single movie that's ever came out. And definitely in these animated movies that they've been dropping, Abominable, Smallfoot, Son of Bigfoot, Missing Link, it's all right there. So we just got to read between the lines, and then we can maybe see their signs.
Guys, I'm probably going to end this here in just a few minutes. I was going to end it at 10, but then we kept talking, and I don't want to keep anybody too late. I know tomorrow it's still the weekday, but this has definitely been fun. Les, hopefully we can do this again sometime. This has been awesome.
Absolutely.
And I'm really sorry. I had to step away a couple times tonight, and I truly apologize for that, everybody. Not only did I have my cat completely clawing me up at one point, my daughter, my youngest daughter, she's sick tonight, and she's having a rough time. She's possibly starting to sprout a tooth in her mouth, and that's like the worst time you could ever have a small human. So I apologize about that. I had full intentions of coming here fully prepared and ready to ask Les a bunch of questions and have a really nice philosophical conversation, but my mind's totally been elsewhere. And, that's on me, and I apologize. I really do.
Oh, you're good. It was a great night. I think so.
Yeah, we had a blast. I had a blast. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll have to have you back. I mean, if you're willing, I'll have to have you on my show, Les. I love to get people who are right up your alley.
Yeah. I'll do it, yeah.
Very cool. Thank you. I'll reach out to you.
Hey, Les, where can the people find you? I know you have a YouTube channel. I looked up your Instagram. You haven't posted since 2013, so I didn't throw you a follow on that. But
I don't know.
Definitely will check you out everywhere else.
I don't know how to use it.
That's me. I only post like 3 times a year.
You can YouTube's the same, or Facebook's the same as YouTube, West Virginia Cryptids, well, WV, Cryptids and Strange Encounters. And then that's basically it. I mean,
And you have 18,000 members on Facebook. That's awesome, man.
yeah.
Les, are you on
Very
TikTok?
No.
Oh, you got to
I
get
don't,
there.
know, I don't know how to use it either.
Hey, Amber, do me a favor and put Second Star Survival's last question. I want to answer that question for that person real quick. If every Sasquatch was metaphysical, then why isn't every human special? Why don't we all transcend? Well, that's the thing. We all are special. I think that where we're at in society right now is we are completely trapped. We are told to constantly look at our phones. We are told to go to work from 9 to 5 and come home and sit in front of the TV. And we have been for like, I don't know, the last 34, no, I'm sorry, more than that, like 30, 40 years. You know, we have become very dumbed down by society. And I think that's why a lot of people are not able to truly tap into their abilities. Everybody's special, man. If you believe in the Bible talks about how every person is special. Every person has abilities, and you know, every person has a guardian angel. You know, there's a lot of different ways that we can look at it, but the main one that I can say is put down the TV, put down the phone, go out in the woods and listen to your heart and see what happens. So that's just my take on that.
I agree with you, Matt. I mean, I think that just in general, like, you know, the news tells us what to believe. The magazines tell us what to believe. And we take that for truth rather than trying to find our own truth. And we have to not rely on anyone else but our own intuition, and trust what you feel, trust what you see, trust your intuition. So many people just kind of dismiss it as, you know, like something they just thought they saw or just something they felt, but they don't trust it. You know, you have to trust your intuition, and not everyone's going to ever have the same abilities. We're all going to be a little different. You know, there's not going to be people, if everybody was alike, it would be boring, you know? So definitely, I think, and y'all know what I'm going to say, meditation is the key to opening a lot of stuff up. Like I'm at the point now where I listen to it all night long. You know, I do it so much, but I love it. And if meditation isn't your thing, find something that works for you. But I really do think that you have to, when you meditate, you're getting up in that higher vibration with your spirituality, and that's what it takes to get there.
Like if you're religious, if you're spiritual, it doesn't matter. You know, your personal journey is all that matters. You know, if
Right.
you want to learn how to tap into those things, if you're a Christian, start praying. Hit your knees every night. Make sure that you're making that time to get your spirit closer to God. If if you're more on the spiritual side, and that's the vibration that you connect with, then start, you know, praying to whatever you believe. Sit down and meditate and try to get closer. It's about the journey of the spirit, not the end goal.
And another thing I just want to throw in here, which is sort of on topic, we have to learn to say no to people and get rid of everybody else's junk in our lives, everybody else's negative drama. Your coworkers that ticked you off today, don't bring that crap home. Let it stay there. Rid yourself of it, because when you're working on your own energy and getting to that higher level, you need to make sure you're just working on your own. You're not working on somebody else's and this person's that left all this crap all over you, you know, their spiritual energy crap. Get rid of it and make sure that you're working on that, because other people's energy really does stick to us, and it can make us feel bad. It's like when you walk into a room and someone's super mad about something, and it can make you angry. It rubs off. So we have to make sure that we're not holding on to that. Toxic relationships. That's another thing. Whether it's family, friends, partners, toxic is toxic no matter who it is. You know, there's a time to say no, and you do you and let them do them. Don't feed into it. Okay, I'm done preaching.
No,
Negative
1,000,000%.
Negative attracts negativity. Positive attracts positivity.
Exactly.
Yep.
Exactly. Well, guys, I think we're going to go ahead and end this. Thank you all for being here. Thanks to everybody watching. Thank you, Les, for agreeing to give us 3 hours of your time. Thank you, Connor. Thank you, Matt.
He only agreed to an hour, but we stretched him out to 180 minutes.
I'm good.
I know.
Good.
I knew it was going to go over. I think we all did.
Matt, definitely. I'm looking forward to hearing you guys talk about dowsing rods because hearing Les, using as paranormal and it leading him right to that next level. I can't wait to hear you guys just bounce information off of each other. But
Yeah.
Les, man, definitely if you guys are looking for speakers, you got the young guns right here, man. I spoke at the Great Florida Bigfoot Conference. I had the place rocking and rolling, and Matt is the future, man. He has an awesome show. He knows what questions to ask. He's boots on the ground. He has found a crazy amount of evidence just in the short amount of time he's been, putting it all towards it. But, man, definitely know you have some family down here in Florida because the Appalachian Trail leaks all the way down, brother.
Well, thank you. And we'll see y'all next time.
All right. Bye, everyone.
Have a good night, guys.
I don't know how to do this. I'm trying.